Chapter 15. Oh my God, it's from that thing. At this moment, some of the sharp-eyed people noticed that Yang Chendong was holding a golden object in his hand. There seemed to be white smoke coming from it, and the sixth young master was blowing on it coquettishly. When he noticed that everyone was looking at him, Yang Chendong finally spoke. Within 5 breaths of time, stand in a line of 10. Otherwise, the thing in my hand will be blind. Before he finished speaking, gunshots rang out again. 3 more shots were fired, and 3 tree trunks fell to the ground. Oh my God. It was unknown which brat shouted, but this shout was undoubtedly like a death knell, causing everyone's minds to tighten. Some people even touched their necks in an exaggerated manner to see if their heads were still on their bodies. The 4 consecutive shots were like an alarm bell, scaring everyone. The 40 people did not waste any time and quickly stood in a line of 10. Although they were not up to standard, everyone tensed their bodies and tried their best to do their best. As expected, they won't shed tears until they see the coffin, Yang Chendong muttered to himself, then put away the desert eagle in his hand. When he looked at everyone, he said clearly, the first time was a warning. The next time I see someone disobeying, I'll directly call them. I hope your heads are stronger than tree trunks. No, we'll all be obedient. Soon, voices of agreement could be heard from the crowd. What kind of joke was this? This young master was so strong, and he even had a powerful hidden weapon that could break tree trunks. Who wouldn't be afraid? Only Yu Guang and the others who had seen guns knew that this was not a hidden weapon, but a very advanced gun. But knowing was one thing, they were still afraid. This was because they had seen the 6th young master use 4 weapons that they had never seen before. If it was so powerful, who knew if there would be more powerful weapons waiting for them? If they didn't listen to him, they would die with just a flick of his finger. And they would die without a complete corpse. Because with the Desert Eagle's tyranny, their heads would definitely be smashed into pieces. After using the deterrence effect, Yang Chendong began to speak. You are all outstanding people, that's why you can stand here. First, he gave these people an affirmation. Sure enough, after hearing this, everyone's face was filled with pride. But in my eyes, geniuses like you are nothing more than trash. Trash that can't even enter the mainstream. Following that, he flattered them to death, causing them to feel dizzy. Of course, there were some who were not convinced, but when they thought of the consequences of Lang Song's tree trunk, all of them tactfully shut their mouths. They knew that with their little strength, they were not worthy of the 6th young master's attention. Seeing that no one objected, Yang Chendong nodded his head in satisfaction. After the suppression, they had to be encouraged as usual. Otherwise, blindly suppressing them would only break their spines and make them unable to stand up again. However, your foundations are not bad. With a little bit of training under my hands, it is still possible for you to become stronger. So, from today onwards, I will train you and make you stronger. Although it will be difficult for you to reach my height in the end, if you do well, you will still be several times stronger than you are now. Of course, the following days will be very difficult, so much so that some of you may not be able to bear it. You may think that you are better off dead. And I, the young master, am very fair. Now, I will give you a chance to choose. If anyone wants to quit now, you can take the initiative to stand up, and I will let you go. After saying this, Yang Chendong looked at the 40 people in front of him, waiting for their decision. Since they were able to come here, they already knew what it was like. Of course, no one would leave casually. As for the training that Yang Chendong said was worse than death, they were not afraid. These desperados had already put life and death out of their minds. If they were not afraid of death, why would they be afraid of training? Very good. Since none of you have chosen to quit, then from now on, you have already lost the ability to choose. Here, you can either continue the training or die. There is no other choice. Saying the ugly words up front was to prevent people from deserting in the future. Although the possibility of this was very small, Yang Chendong still had to set up an ambush. In this way, when the training was too difficult, some people would have to think about whether they could bear the consequences if they wanted to leave. Seeing that no one spoke, Yang Qindong nodded his head in satisfaction. I, the young master, am very generous to my own people. Since you have chosen to stay, you will be a member of the Yang family in the future. Of course, I will not let you suffer. From today onwards, you will have 3 meals a day, and you can eat meat at noon and at night. Every month, you will also receive a monthly allowance of 1 silver tael. This is the basic bottom line. Once the training is over, it will be adjusted according to your results. When the time comes, those with good results will be able to become officials and receive a monthly allowance of 5 silver taels, or even more. All of this will depend on you to fight for yourselves. Wow! Once they heard that there would be meat to eat, and 3 meals a day at that, all of them were overjoyed. At that time, ordinary people only ate 2 meals a day. Even so, there were some people who did not have enough to eat. And these men were between the ages of 17 and 25. This was the age when they could eat a lot. 2 meals a day was simply not enough to satisfy them. The reason they were able to come here was because the tiger's mane said that they would be able to eat until they were full. Now, it seemed that he did not lie to them. Thus, everyone was in a much better mood. Seeing that just having a full meal could make these fearless men so happy, Yang Qindong did not know whether this was a kind of sorrow or not. To become a true member of the Yang family, not only must you be able to earn the respect of others, there are also 2 things that you must achieve: loyalty and obedience. Alright, let's begin the first subject of training, formation. A good army must first have strict military discipline. Being in a formation was a good experience for them. Tiger's mane, you will be in charge of teaching everyone the military posture. He called his first disciple, Tiger's mane, who had trained with him for many days in the Yang family's old mansion, and handed over the training of military posture to him. After saying all this, Yang Qindong said that he would come back in half a month to test the results and left. As soon as Yang Qindong left, the atmosphere at the scene relaxed a lot. Seeing this, Tiger's mane could not help but feel a little anxious. Everyone, do not relax. If anyone does not perform well, I will truthfully report to the young master. When the time comes, you will have to deal with what will happen to you. Once these words were said, the people who originally wanted to relax and slack off immediately became alert. Once they thought of the broken tree trunk, they all became incomparably nervous. Alright, next, everyone follow me to learn the military posture. The main points are to put your heels together, your toes about 60 degrees apart, your legs straight, your lower abdomen slightly tucked in, and your chest out naturally. The first lesson of military posture began. This looked like nothing more than standing, or standing a little straighter. It was such a simple thing. But when the simplest thing had to be done repeatedly, and it had to be done well, it wasn't that simple. In less than an hour, there were people who could not hold on. Tiger's mane mentioned the 6th young master and the tree trunk very well, giving these people enough strength to continue. Yang Qindong did not care about these people's training. He had already arranged for Wang Feng's family to send food to Tiger's mane and the others. They were originally the Yang family's tenant farmers. In their eyes, the Yang family was their sky. Even if they saw something, they would not casually say it. Furthermore, he had given the Wang family enough benefits. Even if it was for the sake of the benefits, they would not dare to say anything. When he went, there were more than 10 people. When he came back, he only brought Xiao Yin back to the old mansion. When he came back, his cousin Yang Fu was already waiting in the backyard side hall. When he saw Yang Qindong, Yang Fu came over with a warm expression. "Sixth cousin, I heard you went out to play a while ago." "Hee, cousin Fu, there is no need to be so polite between us. Tell me, why are you looking for me?" Yang Qindong asked teasingly as he washed his hands in the basin Xiao Yin brought over. Recently, Yang Fu had earned quite a bit of money by following Yang Qindong. With the unique delicacies and the storytelling of The Legend of the Condor Heroes, business was unbelievably good. Even if one wanted to book a table there, they had to be 3 days in advance. Because of this, many high officials and nobles of Jianghu Mansion approached Yang Fu, wanting to use his connections. In addition, with the introduction of the toilet bowl, the clean and hygienic environment was praised by the rich. If anyone did not have such a thing in their home, it was equivalent to being actively excluded from the upper circle. The only person who could make a toilet bowl was the Yang family's craftsman, Li Xuanfu. Although some craftsmen had begun to imitate it, the precise parts were not up to standard, so the results were not very good. Because of this, everyone knew about the relationship between Yang Qindong and Yang Fu. There were even more people who came to ask him to install it earlier. Having earned money and gained face, Yang Fu could be said to be very proud of his success. However, no matter how proud he was, when he saw Yang Qindong, Yang Fu restrained himself a lot. This was because he knew that he had relied entirely on this sixth cousin of his to get to where he was today. This was because Yang Fu did not want to be in the limelight and left all the outside matters to him. Otherwise, others would have come directly to the Yang family's old mansion and not go to his place. Hee. Yang Qindong's direct manner of speaking did not make Yang Fu feel the slightest bit awkward. On the contrary, he even came up and said shamelessly, "Sixth cousin, the legend of the Condor heroes has been finished. Now that the physical book has been released, the business of the Four Seas restaurant is not as good as before. Do you think there are any other good stories?" Chapter 16. The matter of printing the books had been handed over to the old housekeeper, Yang Hai. At that time, he had even given 500 taels of silver as a foundation. After some work, the physical books were indeed printed. Because the cost of production was too high, only 100 books were printed the first time. However, what was unexpected was that even though one book was sold for 20 taels of silver, it was still sold out in half a day. Not only that, there were even more people who had complaints because they couldn't buy it. Therefore, they decided to print another 500 books. But no matter what, with the appearance of the physical books, the craze for shooting condors had somewhat died down. Although repeating the story could still attract a lot of people, who would be willing to cook cold rice when there was a new product. This was why Yang Fu came to ask for a favor. "Oh? The restaurant's business is not good?" Yang Qindong asked in confusion. Even if there was no new story to tell, the role of MSG and other things could not be replaced. They could still attract a large number of diners. No. The business of the restaurant is still very good, but compared to before, the number of people who make reservations 3 days in advance is a lot less. I'm just preparing for a rainy day. Don't I want the business to be better? Yang Fu didn't dare to lie. This was not the time when Yang Qindong wanted to work with him. If he wanted to change people now, who knew how many people would be begging him? Yang Fu's attitude was very proper, and his position was also very low. He even had a fawning expression on his face. Yang Qindong smiled and said, "All right, it's rare for Cousin Fu to think so far ahead. Xiao Yin, bring me the manuscript of my new Xiao Li's Flying Dagger." Xiao Li's Flying Dagger was written by a great clan, Gulong. It talked about the emotional entanglements between Xiao Li's sworn brother Long Xiaoyun and childhood sweetheart Lin Shirin after Xiao Li's Tanhua Li Xuanhuan resigned. He also talked about his sad love with Jingheng fairy Yang Yan, and his sworn brother Ah Fei, which led to a series of grievances. As the saying goes, flying daggers have no lovers but have feelings. Heroes have a weakness for the charms of beauties. There were too many descriptions of love and hatred. He believed that it would be very suitable for young people's tastes. As soon as he heard that there was a new book, Yang Fu became spirited. His eyes shone brightly. When Xiao Yin walked out with the book, he disregarded his status and went up to her. He was just short of snatching it. Get someone to tell it slowly this time. Good stories don't come around all the time. Also, I will release the physical book later. During this time, I will stay at the Yang Qindong Manor to calm down and write a good book. Seeing Yang Fu's performance, Yang Qindong chuckled. Okay, sixth cousin, don't worry. I will put the manuscripts bit by bit. I will try my best to talk for a few more days. If not, I will arrange for someone to personally go to the Yang Manor to look for you. Yang Fu patted his chest and promised. Okay, cousin Fu, do as you see fit." Yang Qindong didn't want to be entangled in this issue. The restaurant was for the sake of earning money to support his huge expenses. Writing a book was just to increase his fame. But in the end, everything still depended on strength. He had always been very clear about this. Satisfied, Yang Fu left. Soon, a frenzy of Shaoli's flying daggers was set off in the city. It was unknown who was very business-minded and got some paper daggers that could be hung on the body. Unexpectedly, they were sold out in a short period of time. Nowadays, on the streets, many young masters and young master would often wear a paper dagger next to the jade pendant on their waist. Of course, Yang Qindong wouldn't copy them. He still had a lot of things to do. Now, he had a lot of drawings in his hands, which gave people a strange feeling. But if a modern person saw them, they wouldn't be surprised. Because they were ordinary fitness objects such as single and parallel bars. Of course, there were also the common 400-meter obstacles used by soldiers. Go and call blacksmith Wu Gang. Wu Gang had been in charge of researching the crossbow. Just last night, the first portable crossbow had been completed. With the first one, it was naturally easy to handle. Next, he just needed to continue to expand the production. And the reason he called him was to make the single and parallel bars. For something like this, it was easy to handle as long as there were drawings. There was no need for any technology. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, it was the promised half a month. Early in the morning, he took Xiao Yin to the Yang family manor outside the city in a carriage. Behind them, there were several carriages with training molds in them. Beside the forest of the Yang family manor, 40 people were standing in 4 neat rows. When Yang Qindong stepped down from the carriage, the instructor, Tiger's man, ran over with big strides. Then, he stopped and reported seriously. Reporting to young master, the 40 people participating in the training are all in place. Please check. Good. Yang Qindong nodded and walked to the front of the 40 people. Listen to the command, at ease, attention. Everyone, turn right, walk in unison, run in unison, walk in unison, march in unison. After a round of inspection, the 40 people's movements were neat and uniform. Although there were some people who made small mistakes sometimes, with only half a month of training, the results were considered good. Very good. You have all completed the first training course with great excellence. Therefore, this young master announces that there will be more food tonight. There will be enough rice and meat. Oh! Waves of cheers were heard. Previously, the 40 people were indeed very worried about whether they could pass Yang Qindong's inspection. Now that their hearts were at ease, they were naturally happy. Good. Before that, we need to set up some things. These will be your training tools in the future. After the order was given, no one hesitated. They all ran to the carriages behind them and moved the tools out one by one. They moved them to a 10 mu open space in the forest. Long ago, he had arranged for people to build a row of simple dormitories here. Fortunately, the weather in Fujian was good at this time. This place would become their training ground for a period of time. Once they passed the test, these people would eventually become seeds, become bone warriors, and even become world-renowned generals. There was strength in numbers. The single and parallel bars were quickly buried according to the specifications. The more troublesome part was the tools for the 400-meter obstacle course. Fortunately, with Yang Qindong's guidance, they were more or less done before the sky turned dark. When night fell, a large batch of prepared meat and vegetables were delivered to the large tent in the forest. The food, which had been seasoned with MSG, was naturally exceptionally delicious. Everyone ate until their stomachs were bloated. After that, other than the 2 who were responsible for keeping watch at night, everyone else went to rest. Xiao Yin had also prepared the young master's bed early in the morning. Yang Qindong did not go to sleep immediately. Instead, he called Tiger's mane and asked about everyone's performance. When he found out that everyone was very enthusiastic, he nodded in satisfaction. These are all good seedlings. They should be properly trained. How about this? You and this young master will work hard together tonight. The moon hung high in the sky. When it shone on the ground, it was as if a silver veil had covered the earth. Two black shadows moved like agile monkeys. They entered the barracks as if they were entering a no-man's land. In just a quarter of an hour, the two reunited. After they nodded at each other, a sharp whistle suddenly sounded. It was especially ear-piercing in the silent night. Beep 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 beep. When the whistle sounded, many people were still immersed in their dreams. Some were even smacking their lips as if they were reminiscing about the delicious food they had eaten that night. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Assemble! Emergency assembly!" The voice was abrupt and nervous. When the people heard the shout, they realized the seriousness of the situation. One by one, they hurriedly got up and began to put on their clothes. After a series of rustling sounds, a shout suddenly sounded. Motherf asterisk cur, who saw my shoes? Bastard, which bastard took my shoes away? If I catch him, I'll spank his ass until it blossoms. Hurry up and assemble. Hurry. Hurry. Outside the barracks, Tiger's Mane's voice sounded one after another. It was like a death sentence. After half a month of training, everyone had gotten used to one thing. When a military order was issued, if anyone did not complete it on time, they would receive inhumane corporal punishment. No one wanted to be punished, so one by one, they ran out barefoot. Including the two who were standing guard, a total of 40 people stood in 4 rows on the field under the moonlight. Bang! The torches were suddenly lit. One by one, they lit up the field. Soon, it was as bright as day. It also made everyone recognize each other. For a moment, the sound of laughter could be heard. Those who rushed out in a hurry were truly in a state of disgrace. Some of them buttoned their clothes wrong, some of them wore their pants inside out, and some of them even wore other people's clothes. Some of them even went bare-chested because of this. While everyone was laughing, Yang Chendong walked to the front of the group under the protection of Tiger's Mane. When everyone saw that incomparably serious face, everyone quickly shut their mouths. Some of them even lowered their heads, as if they did not want the 6th young master to see them in such a sorry state. Suddenly, the whole field quieted down. When everyone could hear each other's breathing, Yang Chendong's voice also sounded at this moment. You have all disappointed me. His opening remark made the atmosphere turn cold in an instant. Look at all of you. You all call yourselves heroes. You all have no one in your eyes. You all think that the heavens are number 1, the earth is number 2, and you are number 3. But it's just an emergency assembly, and you all have turned into this state. Your clothes are untidy, and you still have the nerve to make fun of others? Even I feel embarrassed for you all. Tonight, your Captain Tiger's Mane told me that you all have been performing well recently. This young master was even happy about it. But now, it seems that this is not the case at all. You all have been lying to me. Faced with Yang Chendong's questioning, everyone wanted to say no. They wanted to say that they had been training hard for the past half a month. But when they thought about their current performance, no one could refute anything. Chapter 17. Even Leng Song, who was usually the most arrogant, lowered his head at this moment because he, like everyone else, couldn't find his shoes. This made him, who prided himself on being strong, feel very embarrassed. No one refuted, but that didn't mean that Yang Chendong wouldn't continue. The 2 sentries didn't fulfill their duties and were touched by someone, but they didn't even know. Everyone else is the same. 38 pairs of shoes, do you know what this represents? Let me tell you, in wartime, this represents 38 heads. Since I can take away your shoes without leaving a trace, I can kill you without leaving a trace. Boom! Everyone felt as if a thunderclap had exploded in their minds. That's right, they didn't even know that their shoes were taken away under the bed. If the other party wanted to kill them, wouldn't they really have their throats slit? Everyone knew the seriousness of the matter. Their so-called vigilance had become the most powerless words at this time. They couldn't even say a word to defend themselves. Looking at the silent crowd, Yang Qindong nodded lightly. Very good, it's best to learn from your mistakes. Since none of you refuted, at least it means that you are sensible and reasonable. But I think that some of you might disagree and think that this isn't a battlefield, so how could there be danger? Why do you need to be on guard? Some people would even think that everyone had eaten too much at night, and that was why they had lost their sense of vigilance. No. You're wrong. What is a soldier? It's a group that can enter a battle state at any time. If the enemy really comes, they won't greet you. There's a saying that forgetting to fight is dangerous. I want to give it to you. This young master also wants to say that the reason why soldiers are respected is because they are responsible for the safety of the country. In order to fulfill this responsibility, they must be in a state of readiness at any time, and their nerves must be tense at all times. Only in this way can they not be called soldiers in vain and deserve to be called the backbone of the country. In the future, there will be such emergency night gatherings at irregular times. If you fail, there will be heavy punishment. And for your incompetent performance today, and to help you digest your food, this young master orders that the 5 kilometers run will begin. Everyone, come up and find your shoes. After saying this, Yang Qindong handed over the command to Tiger's man and turned around to go to sleep. Using the requirements of modern soldiers to ask Lang Song and the others might be a bit harsh. However, battles were never child's play. Even in the era of cold weapons, it was the same. In a battle between two armies, there were many cases of camps being raided, and there were countless cases of an entire army being wiped out because of negligence in defense. Since this army was under his command, naturally, Yang Qindong wouldn't allow it. Under the leadership of Tiger's man, 40 people found their shoes and began to run in the field. They didn't blame anyone. It was all their own failure. It was just that they didn't know that the emergency gathering and the 5 kilometers run at night were just appetizers. Early the next morning, when many people still felt that they didn't have enough sleep, they were called to gather and welcomed Yang Qindong, the King of Hell. No one knew who came up with the term King of Hell, but it was very realistic. Because Yang Qindong made his own requirements as soon as he opened his mouth. From today onwards, there would be a 10 kilometers cross-country run in the morning, noon, and evening. In the morning and evening, there would be 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats leaning against the wall. In the morning and evening, there would be a 400 obstacle jump and free rock climbing. In the morning and evening, there would be a requirement that the weight of all activities should not be less than 25 kilograms. In addition, all activities must be completed before mealtime. Although they didn't quite understand what pull-ups and free rock climbing were, the 30 kilometers run in a day was enough to frighten them. Without waiting for them to come back to their senses, Yang Qindong continued, in the future, there will be a 2-hour cultural class every 2 days. This young master will personally teach you how to read and write, teach you arithmetic, teach you how to fight, sign language, and draw maps. If you perform well, you will be rewarded with a Type 92 pistol. Bang bang bang. After finishing his words, Yang Qindong raised his right hand. 20 steps away, 3 hanging porcelain bottles exploded in the air. If you perform well and reach the final assessment, you will be rewarded with a gun like this. Beep beep, beep beep beep. There was another series of gunshots. 50 steps away, 5 porcelain bottles exploded one after another. In the front was a Type 92 pistol, and in the back was a Type 95 automatic rifle. The appearance of these 2 firearms made everyone's eyes light up. Even for Yu Guang and the rest, this was their first time seeing the 95 style. They only felt that it was even cooler than the Type 81 assault rifle they had fought before. Imagine, if they could bring such a weapon back, how envious would their brothers be? The appearance of these 2 firearms was like a shot in the arm. It stimulated everyone. At this moment, everyone felt that the 6th young master was so cute. It was as if training harder was nothing. Their morale was raised. Yang Qindong waved his hand. Under the supervision of Tiger's mane, everyone started their first 10 kilometers run of the day. Everyone consciously picked up the 25 kilogram sandbags and put them on their bodies. Facing the rosy clouds of the morning sun, the 40 men took large strides and began a new day. Yang Chendong had already returned to his dorm. He wasn't going to rest. He wanted to make the most reasonable training plan. In his plan, in the next 2 months, he would teach them shooting, bombing, assassination, night fighting, rescue, assault, decapitation, ambush, rescue, wilderness survival, ambush, camouflage, climbing, 3-3 tactical joint attack, and even flying and diving. Of course, cultural classes were also necessary. Yang Chendong always believed that an army without culture would be hard to talk about loyalty. It would also be impossible to become a real Iron Army. The plan was very grand, but when it was executed, it was naturally very difficult. However, Yang Chendong had confidence, and he also had confidence in these 40 brothers. After running 10 kilometers in the morning, no one complained about being tired. According to the 6th young master's words, training wasn't for others. It was for oneself, and also for oneself. Do you want to have a better life and a better future? Then work hard. Youth. However, 10 kilometers running wasn't considered hard. They were originally a bunch of bumpkins. They couldn't even afford a horse. Usually, they relied on their feet to do things. In addition, when they came back in the morning, there was enough food to replenish their lost energy and nutrients. In order to eat a full meal, many people thought that the training was worth it, no matter how hard it was. However, when they faced the first training session after breakfast, everyone began to call out the nickname of Instructor Yama in their hearts. Not for other reasons, but because in front of them was a 50-meter-long path of thorns. No one knew where the 6th young master got it from. In short, thorns were spread all over the ground. According to Yang Chendong's explanation, everyone had to crawl from here in a crawling manner. This is a test of your sense of obedience. As long as an order is given, even if there is a bottomless abyss in front of you, you must carry out the order. Now, the first group, get ready. Yang Chendong didn't make any impassioned speeches. After briefly explaining the situation, Yang Chendong began to issue orders. The first group had a total of 5 people. Leng Song was among them. From the emergency gathering last night to the gunshots this morning, his heart had been beating uncontrollably for a long time. He seemed to be born as a soldier and had the spirit of not admitting defeat. However, people like him also had extremely strong self-esteem. He would never allow anyone to look down on him because it was more painful than taking his life. Now that he heard Yang Chendong's order, he was the first to lie down on the ground and crawl toward the thorns in front of him. With Leng Song taking the lead, the other 4 people only hesitated for a moment before they followed suit and lay down on the ground. The brambles were originally covered in thorns, especially when they were crawling. It was easy to imagine how painful it would be when those thorns pierced into the flesh. However, the performance of the first group of 5 was indeed very good. No one complained. At most, they frowned. Then, regardless of the blood flowing out of their arms and bodies, they bravely moved forward. The second group, get ready. Tiger's mane, Xiao Yin, prepare the water for disinfection and take out the prepared gauze and alcohol. Looking at Leng Song's performance with satisfaction, Yang Chendong nodded and ordered. Since they were his soldiers, of course, he couldn't let their lives be in danger because of training. Therefore, he prepared everything early. As for the gauze, alcohol, and oral anti-inflammatory medicine, the warehouse could be described as a mountain. He could also use this opportunity to teach everyone the essentials of simple first aid movements. It could be said that he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Group after group, a total of 40 people, no one found any excuses. They all passed through the thorns, causing everyone to be injured all over. Fortunately, they were well prepared and didn't delay the following training. However, Yang Chendong still decided to change the following class into a cultural class. And before the class, he also taught everyone a song. Song of Comrades. Comrades, comrades are as close as brothers. I hope to call us together. You come from the border, I come from the mainland. We are all children of the country. Comrades, comrades. This intimate name, this noble friendship, unite us into a steel collective. A few small changes were made to the lyrics to better fit the current situation. Yang Chendong's voice was not bad. He once played a musician during a mission, so singing a military song was a piece of cake. Coupled with the fact that the song itself was very simple, it was quickly accepted by everyone. Unknowingly, when they took the lead again, there were already people who began to sing. Chapter 18. Yang Chendong believed that once everyone got used to this strange song and tone, it wouldn't be long before they would be unable to forget it. They would also have a deeper understanding of the meaning and content of the lyrics. Yang Chendong's plan was not bad. The song not only boosted everyone's morale, but it also brought everyone closer. What he didn't expect was that after these people joined the army, the first thing they did when they led the troops was to climb the thorny bushes. The second thing they did was to sing the Song of Comrades. This became a custom and tradition that was passed down. The song was only taught for half an hour, and everyone basically knew it. After that, it was just a process of familiarizing themselves with the lyrics. After that, Yang Chendong took the lead and began to teach everyone cultural lessons. He started with the simplest, learning how to read. In the Ming Dynasty, the literacy rate was very low. Or rather, it was always like that. Only certain families had access to books. This was also the reason why scholars had such a high social status. Not to mention them, even before the new China's literacy program, the illiteracy rate was 80%. Since Yang Chendong was here, of course, he couldn't abide by this rule. At least in the places he could influence, he had to try his best to make as many people literate as possible. Needless to say, the army was even more so. The great founder of the country once said, "An army without culture is a stupid army, and a stupid army cannot defeat the enemy." In order to give everyone time to self-study in the future, Yang Chendong chose to teach everyone pinyin first. After that, he would make a dictionary. Since there were many samples in the warehouse, he just had to copy them. This way, whenever and wherever they didn't know a word, they wouldn't have to ask others. At the same time, it could solve the problem of traditional Chinese characters and make writing more concise. Today, I will teach everyone pinyin and the understanding of simplified numbers. Numbers are divided into 10, and there are 63 pinyin characters. Among them, there are 23 consonants, 24 vowels, and 16 of them can be read as a whole. Everyone was seriously looking at the little blackboard in front of them. Even Tiger Edge and Xiao Yin had moved a little platform to listen and watch. They were looking at the beautiful symbols that the chalk had drawn on the blackboard. Everyone knew that whether or not they passed the cultural lesson would affect their future prospects. Xiao Yin heard from the young master that she would become a cultural teacher in the future. She had to learn more to be better able to teach others. However, at this moment, she couldn't listen at all. She couldn't understand where the young master learned these so-called strange things. Also, where did he get that gun from? Why was it so powerful? In the past few months, the young master gave her a feeling of familiarity. Familiarity was familiarity because of his concern for her. Strangeness because of his outstanding abilities, and bewitching. She really didn't know what kind of woman young master would marry in the future. That would really be the blessing of 8 lifetimes of cultivation. After all, she was to follow the young master for her to follow him for the rest of her life. Isn't it better if the young to her, to say, of? Of course. Time passed day after day. Everyone's improvement was very obvious. After going through the trials of the modern army, the training method had already proven its feasibility. In addition, people at this time were used to living a hard life, so they were even more able to endure hardship. This group of 40 people quickly changed. They were like outstanding soldiers who had transformed. Little Li's flying dagger became the new trend that everyone sought after. Li Xuanhuan's name became a household name in Jianghu. Naturally, the business of the Four Seas restaurant also rose along with it. Reservations were made 3 days in advance. There were even people who prepared pens and ink, intending to record everything the storyteller said and compile it into a book. There were even people comparing who was more powerful between Guo Jing and Li Xuanhuan. Because of this, there were even cases of scholars coming to blows. When Yang Qindong heard about this, he laughed. It wasn't a matter of the same era at all. They were originally made-up people. How could one compare them? However, this matter also allowed him to see the influence of the two stories. He decided to add fuel to the fire. He took some time to go back to the Yang family's old mansion and found the old housekeeper Yang Hai. He had him make a Yang Bao. The main content of Yang Bao's plan was to republish the story of the Condor and the Little Li's Flying Dagger in installments. In between, there were some articles promoting the strength of the Ming dynasty. These things could be asked to write by famous scholars. He told them that once they used the manuscript, they would be rewarded handsomely. He also left some time to write miscellaneous articles. For example, it was easy to get sick if you ate unboiled water, so you had to boil it before drinking it. For example, you had to wash your hands before and after meals to prevent diseases from entering your mouth. For example, you had to take a bath after being drenched in rain to prevent catching a cold. It was still the same idea as before. After all, although the Little Li's Flying Dagger and Little Li's Flying Dagger were popular, their limitations were too strong. They were mainly in the vicinity of Jianghu Prefecture. He wanted to spread these good things and open up his reputation. It was not enough to rely on such a small place. Once he was famous, Yang Bao would add in some articles that flattered the emperor. This way, he would be able to gain the emperor's favor. In the future, when Yang Qindong did things, it would be best if he could have an official as a cover. Letting the articles of famous scholars enter would be able to gain the favor of the scholars. This was also very important. They were currently the main power in the imperial court. In the end, he would create a small percentage of miscellaneous articles to benefit the people. This could be considered a subtle change. Once the matter of the newspaper was mentioned, Yang Hai naturally did as he was told. With the sixth young master, the Yang family's old residence did not lack money. Large amounts of money flowed in every day. It could not be stopped. Not to mention, according to the sixth young master, not only could running a newspaper make money, it could also increase one's reputation. How could this not be in action? Yang Bao was in the midst of his preparations. Dao Feng's training had come to an end. The name Dao Feng was personally given by Yang Qindong. He also said that in the future, only those who had undergone such training and had excellent results in the final test would be given the name Dao Feng. As such, just this name alone was enough to make many people excited and tremble. The 3 months of formal training had come to an end. It was the first month of 1446, the 11th year of the Jingtong dynasty. Yang Qindong grew another year, becoming a 16-year-old young man. It was almost the new year, and the entire Yang family village was in a festive mood. Because he had made too much money in business, Yang Qindong simply reduced the land tax for most of the tenant farmers in the Yang family manor. Just based on this, everyone was beaming with joy. However, in the depths of the forest in the Yang family village, the atmosphere was extremely tense. It was not because of anything else. Up until last night, all the tests had ended. Next was to wait for the assignments. In front of everyone, there was a form to be filled out. This was the application form for the university entrance examination. There were a few areas written on it. There were Navy, Army, instructor, and private Yang family members to choose from. Among them, the Navy had the most people, 20, the Army had 10, 5 instructors, and 5 private soldiers. From this, it could be seen that the main direction of development was the sea. This was also why Yang Qindong did not want to have any conflicts with the Ming dynasty government. According to the requirements, they were willing to fill out the form. However, this did not mean that they would become what they wished for. In the end, it was up to the sixth young master to decide and assign them according to ability. For example, if there were not enough places for the Navy, they would naturally have to fill in from other candidates. Needless to say, Yu Guang and the other pirates would naturally sign up for the navy. Apart from that, the 5 private Yang family members were the most popular. To be able to become a private Yang family member was equivalent to having the opportunity to be by the side of the 6th young master. Naturally, this was what everyone hoped for. Although Instructor Yama was a bit harsh during training, he was really good to them at other times. Their food, shelter, and clothing were all taken care of to the best of their ability. Even if their parents and relatives were here, they might not be able to do so. Moreover, the 6th young master was not short of money. Any business that he participated in was in existence that made a lot of money. Following the young master, how could there be no benefits? If it was possible, even if all 40 of them became servants of the Yang family, they would still be willing. There were only 5 places, so they could only fight for it. For a time, apart from Yu Guang and the other 10 people who signed up for the navy, only Leng Song did not sign up to be a private Yang family member. The other 29 people all filled in the first column. After Yang Chendong saw the form that everyone filled in, he could not help but smile bitterly. But at the same time, he was curious about Leng Song. He knew that Yu Guang and the others signed up for the navy for a reason. They originally came from there, so it was not surprising that they returned to the sea. But why did Leng Song sign up for the army? Call Leng Song in. With curiosity, Yang Chendong wanted to know what he was thinking. Soon, Leng Song, who was full of energy, but his face was also a lot darker, walked into the room that belonged to Yang Chendong. As soon as he entered, his feet were close together and he stood at attention. After 3 months of training, he already looked like a veteran in the army, especially the military salute, which was very standard. Salute over. Yang Chendong naturally got up and returned the salute, then he sat down. While looking at Leng Song's assessment results, he asked casually. Among the 40 people, your results are really the best. You did not let the young master down, but why did you fill in the army in the end? Reporting to the young master, you said that the army is the tiger of the land in the future, and I am willing to be a tiger. Leng Song replied with a sonorous and powerful voice. Then why didn't you want to be a private Yang family member? You know, that is my private army. Yang Chendong suddenly looked up and asked his own question. Reporting to the young master, it is not that Leng Song does not want to, it is that I cannot. Oh. Why not? Yang Chendong's interest was aroused. Chapter 19. Reporting to young master, you already have Hu Mang by your side. I once sparred with him in private, and he is very strong. Right now, it is only because he is still young, but once he is over 20 years old, it will be very difficult for me to be his opponent. That's why I think that with Tiger's mane by young master's side, it's enough to ensure your safety. It'd be a waste for me to stay, Leng Song said with his eyes looking straight ahead. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't say. In terms of strength, Yang Chendong was probably the strongest one. Staying behind to protect someone who was stronger than him, he felt that it was inappropriate no matter how he looked at it. Ha ha ha. Finally knowing the reason why Leng Song didn't want to join Yang Chendong's private soldiers, Yang Chendong laughed and said, "All right, I got it. You can go now." Leng Song's matter was just an interlude. After a whole morning's evaluation and lunch, which Yang Chendong also called the next meal, the 40 people gathered on the sports field. His gaze swept over the 40 people one by one. Now, he could accurately call out the name of any one of them. He even knew their personalities and where their strengths and weaknesses were. After 3 months of interaction, they had already developed a deep bond with each other. However, all good things must come to an end. In the military's words, it was called a camp made of iron, but flowing soldiers. That was suitable for the veterans, and also suitable for the new recruits to be assigned to the company. Very good, you didn't disappoint me. Everyone's final test results are above good. To be able to change so much in 3 months, to be honest, I'm very happy. From now on, you're officially a soldier of the Yang family. After receiving Yang Chendong's praise, the 40 people clapped and celebrated in unison. Some of them even shed tears. Only they themselves knew how they had managed to survive these 3 months and what they had gained. And what they gained would accompany them for the rest of their lives, engraved in their bones, and never forgotten. You're all good. Now I've fulfilled my promise. From now on, you're a member of Ling Feng, and this title will be glorious. Perhaps there will be new people joining us in the future, but they will not have the chance to be personally trained by me. They will be trained by you all. Therefore, I will first announce the names of the 5 instructors. To be honest, those who were able to persist for 3 months were all people who had gone through inhuman trials. In their opinion, with such ability, they should have joined the Yang family army. Although this army might not even exist yet, as long as there were people like them, it was equivalent to having hope. Therefore, there weren't many people who really wanted to be an instructor. However, everyone had their own ambitions. There were still some people who wrote their second wish to be an instructor. Perhaps they also wanted to be like Yang Qindong and train more outstanding talents. He Yang, Shi Yi, Qi Ming, Zhu Ziguang, Song Deshang. The 5 of you will be the first batch of instructors. In the future, no matter who wants to join Cold Front, they will need at least 2 of you to agree. This is the authority given to you by the young master, and I hope that you will use this authority well. What I have to say is, if any of the people you recommend are qualified, it will directly affect you. If the consequences are too severe, it might be the fuse that will cause the name of Cold Front to be taken away from you. Do you understand? Understood. Rest assured, 6th young master, we will do our best. Those who are not strong enough will not be given the name of Cold Front. He Yang and the other 4 stepped forward, expressing their determination. Very good. Tiger's Mane, bring out the equipment. Yang Qindong nodded in satisfaction, then gave the order to the people behind him. Tiger's Mane walked out, carrying 5 dictionaries, a Type 81 rifle, a small crossbow, a trident, a military knife, a compass, and a Type 54 pistol. 195 mm in length, 850 g in weight, 8 rounds in magazine, effective range of 50 meters. A pistol and a Type 81 rifle were given to them. Yang Qindong said, I didn't give you the Type 95 because you will appear as instructors in the future. Normal soldiers will need to familiarize themselves with the Type 81 rifle first. I hope you can understand. The pistols are for you to protect yourselves. Understood. He Yang and the other 4 were very excited. They originally thought that they would only get the Type 95 pistol. Although it was changed to a Type 81 rifle, they also had a small pistol. That was something that they had always dreamed of. After arranging the instructors, he announced the Navy, Yu Guang and the rest of the 20, and the Army, Leng Song, Ting Shan and the rest of the 10. Finally, he announced the 5 Yang family guards, who would be Yang Qindong's private soldiers. For convenience, he gave the 5 of them code names, Beta Persei, Yang San, Yang Si, Yang Wu, and Yang Lu. Needless to say, Yang Yi was naturally Tiger's Mane. Everyone received the Type 95 pistol and 100 rounds of ammunition. They were all very excited. But when Yang Qindong took out 3 Type 92 pistols, the 40 people looked at him excitedly. They didn't forget that at the beginning, the 6th young master said that he would reward the person with the best results with a Type 92 pistol. Seeing everyone's eyes, Yang Qindong said in a loud voice, Ling Song, Yu Guang, Ting Shan, come out. Yes. 3 voices sounded in unison. The 3 people walked out at the same time and then trotted to the front of Yang Qindong. They were ecstatic to receive the Type 92 pistol. Looking at the 3 people's excited faces, Yang Qindong said in an encouraging tone, You 3 have the best results. I hope you will continue to work hard. Soon, I will start the ceremony. I hope you will become the first batch of officers. At that time, there will be more rewards waiting for you. Yes, 6th young master, please rest assured. We will not disappoint your expectations and perform well. Very good. Leng Song, Ting Shan, in the future, the army will be established by you. I don't care about the number of people, but I do care about the quality. If you dare to find people to fill the numbers, then this young master will take back everything you have now and will also expel them from Ling Feng's team. Sixth young master, please rest assured. We know what to do. We won't give you the chance to expel us. Leng Song and Ting Shan both said solemnly. He shifted his gaze to Yu Guang. After you go back, I hope you can influence the others and lead them in a good direction. Also, tell Gao Xiong to learn how to be a soldier. The 5 instructors can teach him how to do it. He also needs to pass the test to become a member of Ling Feng. Otherwise, he will be eliminated. When the time comes, he will be alone on a deserted island. After the annual meeting, I will go to the Black Dock. I hope you can bring me a different kind of navy. When the time comes, I will naturally reward you. The so-called putting people on a deserted island wasn't just something Yang Qindong said. He had already told the 40 people that if they betrayed him, he would kill them. Because of their friendship, the 6th young master wouldn't kill them. But he would send them to a deserted island to fend for themselves. 6th young master, please rest assured. I will tell Gao Xiong everything that happened in the past 3 months. I believe that Gao Xiong will know what to do. Yu Guang was very smart. He didn't call Gao Xiong boss or big brother Gao. Because he knew that from 3 months ago, he only belonged to the Yang family and listened to the 6th young master. As for the others, they were just friends. Good. Gao Xiong patted Yu Guang's shoulder to show that he was very satisfied with his attitude. Yang Qindong looked at the crowd and said with a sad tone. Everyone, listen to the young master's command. Turn around and run to the place where you should go. Yes. Everyone used all their strength to let out a roar and then ran away crying. Parting is for a better reunion. The moment everyone ran out, they knew that they wouldn't be able to see the 6th young master again in a short time. But they also believed that as long as they work hard, the 6th young master will remember their names until the next time they meet. The emergency training ended. Yang Qindong ordered people to take away everything in the forest. He would restore this place to its original appearance. This place would also become a sealed memory. Then, he brought Xiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, and 5 of his personal guards to the Yang family's old mansion in the city. With firm footsteps, Yang Qindong knew that his fate had changed. He even brought more people with him. And for the sake of these people who believed in him, he could only bravely and firmly take every step forward. He couldn't hesitate or shrink back. New Year. The year 1445 was a sad year for the Yang family. Old Madame Yang Lusher passed away due to illness. It was as if the last half of the Yang family's sky had collapsed. But at the same time, it was also a year of hope. Because of the sudden rise of the Yang family's 6th young master, Yang Qindong, and his performance in all aspects shocked everyone's eyes, allowing everyone to see new hope. Amidst the cheers of 70 to 80 people in the old mansion, Yang Qindong gave everyone a reward of 2 taels of silver. Among them, carpenter Li Xuanfu, blacksmith Wu Gang, and kitchen maid Yi Xiu'er each received 10 taels of silver. Everyone was so happy that they couldn't close their mouths. Even Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and the other 4 received an additional reward of 10 taels of silver each. Especially Xiao Yin, after receiving the 10 taels of silver, she hurriedly saved it up. In her words, it was reserved for the young master's marriage in the future. As the only personal maid left behind by the old madam for the 6th young master, she had to worry about this matter as well. In this regard, Yang Qindong blushed. No matter what, he was still a man in his 40s. Asking him to accept the current social customs of marrying a 15-year-old girl, or even a 15-year-old girl, felt so awkward. It couldn't even be described as an old cow eating young grass. No, early marriage and early childbirth are not good for the adults and children. This must be changed. In the future, it will be 22 years old for men and 20 years old for women. Although it's still a little early, this is already a challenge to the ancient customs of the time. Chapter 20. It was just that the plan could not keep up with the changes. Tiger's Mane was only 17 years old, only 1 year older than Yang Chendong, but he was indeed going to get married. This was something that the sixth young master had personally said before. He was going to propose to Wang Feng on behalf of Tiger's Mane. Now that he had said it, he had to fulfill his promise. Otherwise, he would lose the hearts of the people. Therefore, on the 7th day of the first lunar month, Yang Chendong arranged for Xiao Yin and the cook, Yi Chor, to go to the Yang manor together and bring back 2 carriages full of good things. Yang Chendong himself was not married yet, so he naturally could not propose on behalf of someone else. However, he had sent out his personal maidservants. This was a kind of attitude. Wang Feng had already met Tiger's Mane many times and had even privately arranged a marriage. Even the parents of the Wang clan knew about this matter. Moreover, the sixth young master had sent someone to personally go, so how could they not agree? They immediately picked a good date to complete the wedding on the 18th day of the first lunar month. When Xiao Yin and Yi Chor returned from their errands and saw Tiger's Mane asking for benefits, the man, who had always been very tough, suddenly ran. He rushed to the front of the sixth young master, who was writing Xiao Li's flying dagger in the study. He fell to his knees with a thump, and then his tears flowed uncontrollably. He. Yang Chendong naturally knew what had happened. Xiao Yin had come to report to him as soon as she returned to the old residence. All right, Tiger's Mane, do well in the future. This young master also wishes you happiness, but you must remember to treat Feng well. You must not be half-hearted. Wang Feng was a slave. For this matter, Yang Chendong had already spent a large sum of money to redeem her from the government. In the future, she would be a good citizen. This was something that many people had hoped for. Now, it had all come true. How could Tiger's Mane not be excited and moved? As for Tiger's Mane, Yang Chendong had planned to redeem him as well, but he refused to comply. He even said that he would follow the sixth young master for the rest of his life and would never betray him. As a result, the sixth young master didn't know what to say. In any case, in his eyes, Tiger's Mane was no longer a servant. If it was possible, he would also break the so-called merchants, slaves, and lowlies records and become a commoner. Even though he was born as a Han, he was originally noble. In this life, he would also strive for this ideal. In the blink of an eye, it was the 18th of the first month. This day was not only Tiger's Mane's wedding day, but also the day when the first issue of Yang Bao appeared. Yang Chendong had already become a celebrity in Jianghu Prefecture because of his condor shooting and Xiao Li's flying dagger. Previously, he had released 100 copies of The Legend of the Condor Heroes, but they were sold out in half a day. Then, another 500 copies were released, but they were also sold out in a day. This made many people look forward to printing more copies. At this time, Yang Bao appeared. It was said that not only did it have the story of the condor shooting, it also had the latest and most popular Xiao Fei, Li Fei, written records. Because of this, it became popular before it was sold. When the trial 100 copies of Yang Bao appeared in the bookstore, they were all sold out. After all, it was only 200 copper coins. It was so popular, no wonder it sold out so quickly. Seeing everyone's enthusiasm, the old housekeeper, Yang Hai, decisively began printing more copies. On the second day, 500 copies were produced, and they were also sold out in 2 hours. On the third day, 1,000 copies were printed. This way, they could barely cope with the current situation. In such a big Jianghu prefecture, only 1,000 copies could be sold in a day. Hearing this news, Yang Chendong felt a wave of sadness. This was caused by the ignorance of the people. Most people were illiterate. No matter how good your writing was, no matter how attractive your story was, if everyone was illiterate, what could you do? He increasingly felt the importance of universal literacy. Unfortunately, his influence was still small, and he did not dare to take too big a step. He could only plan slowly. Speaking of influence, Yang Chendong decided to go to the illegal docks to take a look. More than 4 months had passed since Leng Feng left. At the end of May, Yang Chendong took Xiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and other personal guards, as well as craftsman Li Xuanfu, blacksmith Wu Gang, and others from Jianghu to Fuzhou. As the scale grew larger, it was no longer safe to do anything in the Yang family's old residence or Yang village. After thinking about it, Yang Chendong treated the illegal docks as his base. It was close to the sea, and there were few people there. Coupled with the vigilant sentries, it was not a problem to not be discovered. Because Yang Chendong's group had many people, many carriages, and many goods, it took them 7 days to reach the illegal docks. As soon as they entered, Li Xuanfu, Wu Gang, and others were frightened. They saw hundreds of big men surrounding them. Their eyes were wide open, giving the impression that they wanted to eat people. The sixth young master has arrived. Tiger's Mane acted as if he did not see them, because he smelled the same aura from these people. With a loud shout, the carriage stopped, and Yang Chendong, still dressed in green, stepped out. The moment he appeared, the 100 or so burly men all stood solemnly like wooden stakes. No matter how the sea breeze blew, they didn't even blink. Among these people, there were familiar faces, such as Gao Xiong, Yu Guang, Ling Song, Ting Shan, Instructor He Yang, Song Desheng, and others. There were also unfamiliar faces, those who joined later. Among them, there were people who had not seen Yang Chendong before, but this did not mean that they had not heard of the legend of the sixth young master. It was likely that everyone was tired of hearing about it. Now that they finally saw the real person, they were naturally excited and curious. Good, not bad. Seeing that the group had grown significantly, Yang Chendong nodded in satisfaction, then laughed and walked forward. As he walked, he sang loudly, "Comrades, comrades are as close as brothers. Comrades, comrades are as close as brothers. I hope that you can call us together." Suddenly, the chorus of hundreds of people began. Even Xiao Yin, who had heard it countless times, hummed softly, looking at Yang Chendong's back with a face full of admiration and respect. Blacksmith Li Xuanfu and blacksmith Wu Gang finally adapted from their fear. They also finally knew that these people were the sixth young master's servants. However, the sudden appearance of so many servants still gave them a fright. After they looked at each other, they vaguely thought of something. However, when they thought about it again, they were originally servants of the Yang family. From a certain point of view, their fates had long been intertwined. Moreover, the sixth young master had treated them well. Not only did he redeem their freedom, he also gave them good status and even more money. These were all things that they did not dare to imagine before. As the saying goes, a gentleman will die for his bosom friend. Since the sixth young master thought so highly of them, what harm was there in risking their lives for this? The two of them quickly thought it through, and under the enthusiasm of the soldiers, they quickly blended into the environment. However, all the veterans knew the importance of knowledge. Regardless of whether they were blacksmiths or blacksmiths, they were all creators. If they had a good relationship with these people, they would be able to enjoy the benefits of being in a favorable position when new things appeared in the future. For a moment, everyone fought to get on good terms with the blacksmiths and blacksmiths that they brought along, which made the blacksmiths feel flattered. After Yang Chendong arrived, he first met with Gao Xiong, Yu Guang, Ling Song, Ting Shan, and He Yang, the 5 instructors. Reporting to the sixth young master, Gao Xiong has completed all the tests and his results are excellent. He is fully qualified to become a member of the Cold Front. Regarding this, the 5 of us are willing to jointly vouch for him. He Yang seemed to know what Yang Chendong wanted to ask, so he volunteered to stand out. Is that so? Seeing that the 5 instructors were willing to vouch for him, Yang Chendong was very gratified. This was enough to prove that Gao Xiong had suffered and worked hard. At this moment, Gao Xiong was standing there rubbing his hands, looking like he wanted to say something but stopped. Haha. Looking at Gao Xiong's embarrassed expression, Yang Chendong laughed and casually took out a Type 92 pistol like magic and threw it over. Gao Xiong hurriedly caught it with both hands and then carefully touched the cold pistol. Then, tears uncontrollably flowed out. No one knew how he had survived the past few months. When Yu Guang and the others came back, each of them brought a Type 95 pistol, and most importantly, a Type 92 pistol. At that time, he, who used to be the boss, was envious. But when he wanted to touch the pistol, he was told by Yu Guang that he wasn't a member of the Cold Front and hadn't passed the test, so he couldn't use such an advanced weapon. Gao Xiong's reply was, of course, bullshit. What a joke, he was the head of the pirates. If he wasn't qualified, then who was? So he wanted to take the pistol, but Yu Guang, who was no match for him in close combat, dodged in a flash. When Gao Xiong was about to step forward again, Ling Song suddenly moved and kicked him, making Gao Xiong feel like his bones were about to fall apart. One must know that he used to be the boss of the pirates. His body naturally didn't need to be mentioned. He relied on his martial arts to get to his position. After being kicked by Ling Song, how could he let it go? He went all out. But in just 3 moves, he fell to the ground and couldn't move. This was because Ling Song knew that this person was also valued by the 6th young master. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem for him to be bedridden for half a year within 3 moves. Gao Xiong, who was pulled up by Yu Guang, felt like he had lost face. When he returned, he was depressed for a night. When he came out the next morning, he saw that many of the pirates he led were signing up for the Cold Front's test. His depressed heart came back to life. He wanted to prove that he wasn't inferior to anyone, so he signed up. For this reason, he didn't hold back and handed over the authority to command the pirates to Yu Guang. He wanted to see how the Cold Front could be so arrogant. It was only when the real training began that he realized where her confidence came from. Gao Xiong gritted his teeth and endured as he saw people being eliminated and unable to continue. Actually, the training subjects were the same, but because it was the first time he Yang, Song De Shang, and the others were leading troops, they were a little too hasty. Some people couldn't take it and got injured and were eliminated. But in the end, there were still more than 20 people who persevered. Gao Xiong was one of them. He passed the test as the overall result. Chapter 21. Thus, He Yang, Song De Shang and the other 2 became his guarantor. Since then, Gao Xiong had been looking forward to the arrival of the 6th young master every day, not for anything else but to prove himself. Today, she finally saw the 6th young master. She also obtained the Type 92 pistol that she wanted to touch but couldn't. How could she not cry and not run away? He patted Gao Xiong's shoulder and said, "Good job. In the future, the navy will be handed over to you." This wasn't to comfort him, but because Gao Xiong had a kind of charisma that could attract others. Just from this point, Yu Guang still lacked experience, so at present, appointing him as the head of the navy was a natural thing to do. The compliment made Gao Xiong burst into tears, but no one around him laughed at him, because they had also walked out like this. After comforting Gao Xiong, he went to see the new members of Cold Front. As usual, everyone was given a Type 95 pistol, which was a happy scene. At the same time, he learned from Gao Xiong that in the past 6 months, ever since they had gotten their new weapons, they had continuously defeated several nearby pirates and recruited some talents. Their numbers had increased from less than 30 people in the beginning to more than 300 people now. Of course, all the people were young and strong, and had no worries, completely meeting Yang Chendong's recruitment requirements. This was something that couldn't be helped. Before they had enough strength, it would be easy to be exposed if they looked for someone with a family. One day, after they had their own real base, they could look for someone with a family. Even all the soldiers had to have a family. This was a sustainable development. And this real base, Yang Chendong already had a target, which was not far from Fuzhou, Qiqian City. Today, Qiqian City hasn't been developed too much, the entire city's residents were only a few tens of thousands. But with a few hundred against tens of thousands, even if they won, they wouldn't be able to defend. Gao Xiong, you have to continue to expand your strength and recruit more soldiers. Is there a problem with the money? Reporting to the 6th young master, there's no problem with the money, we robbed a lot, so we're still rich. When the 6th young master goes back, you can take some back. Hee, it's just that we don't have enough weapons, and we don't have enough ammunition. Gao Xiong scratched his head with an embarrassed expression. With the Type 87 automatic grenade launcher, it was very satisfying to fight against other pirates. With a 6x30 scope telescope in hand, often the enemy didn't even notice them, and they could take the initiative to attack. Of course, they returned with a great victory. The enemy lost before they could even react. But the problem, the consumption of ammunition was too much. Whenever there was a battle, Gao Xiong would yell, "Bomb! Bomb!" However, when the battle was over, they would curse again, saying that these brats didn't know how to fight, and how many cannonballs they fired in this battle, etc. So, when the battle started, everyone didn't know what to do. As a result, close combat occurred. Even the Type 81 assault rifles were not willing to use bullets. Instead, they used primitive bows and arrows. Because of this, one of their brothers was injured in a battle. They had no choice but to use guns to solve the problem. Listening to Gao Xiong and Yue Guang's report, Yang Qindong shook his head. This is wrong. You know, a soldier's life is always the most valuable, and weapons are just an auxiliary means. If there are no more weapons, they can be made. If there are no more bullets, they can be produced. This time, I mobilized the craftsmen to solve this problem. But if a soldier loses his life, then there's nothing left, do you understand? Yang Qindong said sternly, which made Gao Xiong, Yue Guang and the others excited. They felt honored to have such a master. They also knew that in the next war, they didn't need to be too stingy with ammunition, so the safety of the soldiers would be more guaranteed. These words also imperceptibly raised the status of Li Xuanfu and Wu Gang. They believed that in the future, no one would be bad to them, and no one would find trouble with them. Next, in order to make Gao Xiong and Yue Guang feel relieved, Yang Qindong let Tiger's man unload the new cannons and ammunition one by one. Type 0435mm automatic grenade launcher, weight 48 Gene, length 1023 mm, effective range 1750 meters, capacity 30 rounds. Type 7582mm recoilless cannon, effective range 2000 meters. Type 75 105mm recoilless cannon, effective range 7,400 meters. The reason why the howitzers and recoilless cannons were chosen was because the Navy's hull could withstand it. Otherwise, there would be more choices. In this way, when the shells were fired, the damage to the ship would be minimal, and at least the ship would not capsize. Gao Xiong and Yue Guang were naturally excited to have 3 new types of cannons. Even Leng Song and Ting Shan were greedy when they saw this. But today's army simply did not need these things. Even if they recently recruited some soldiers from the Navy, the number of soldiers was still less than 30. These people really did not need to be equipped with such powerful cannons. The cannons are given to you. Only veterans can operate them. As for the new recruits, they can use crossbows and crossbows first. When they pass Leng Feng's assessment and become a regular soldier, then they can be equipped with guns. This is the principle, do you understand? Yang Qindong looked at the excited faces of the people and began to pour cold water on them. He absolutely could not let the new recruits touch guns. If there was any internal strife, it would be an irreparable loss. Yes, sir. Everyone replied. For the 6th young master, they all respected him very much. His words were like an imperial edict. Also, the cannons and guns are given to you, but the amount of ammunition is limited. I can't stay here for a long time. What if you use too much? Then you have to find a way to be self-sufficient. Those blacksmiths will be your suppliers. With their current abilities, it is impossible for them to make guns and cannons, but they should be able to make ammunition with some effort. In short, think of a way to get whatever they need. Other than not being able to use guns on land, you can do whatever you want on the sea. The Ming Dynasty was still restricted from the sea. Naturally, they did not have to worry about doing anything that would provoke them. Therefore, it was fine even if they made a big move on the sea. Understood. Hearing that they could let the blacksmiths make ammunition, if they succeeded, the power of these weapons would be even greater. For a moment, everyone promised that the blacksmith's needs were everyone's needs. They would not hold them back. Seeing that everyone had expressed their stance, Yang Chendong was finally relieved. I am not worried about you guys doing things. Also, clean up this area as soon as possible. At the same time, send people to investigate the situation in Crimson City. We need to get a detailed map of the city's defenses. We also need to sneak in. Once the time is right, we will take over that place. This is good, this is good. Hearing that they were going to open up a new territory, Gao Xiong was so happy that he almost jumped up. The place they were currently at was called the Black Pier. The reason why it was called that was enough to show that it could not be exposed. If they had their own island, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. They would no longer have to be on tenterhooks like they were now, afraid that one day they would be discovered and swallowed up. Seeing that everyone was so focused on the matter of taking over Crimson City, Yang Chendong knew that the morale of the troops could be used. Once the time was right, these people would be vicious wolves and would display endless strength. Alright, didn't you say that you got a few new ships? Let's go take a look. At the bay of the Black Pier, there were 8 ships of various sizes. Among them, 2 of the larger ships were level 4 ships, and 6 were level 5 warships. From the initial 2 ships to the current 8 ships, it was proof of the efforts of Gao Xiong and Yu Guang. Regarding this, Yang Chendong praised them, but also made a request, saying that it was not enough. From the number of people to the number of warships, it was not enough. In response, Gao Xiong and Xiao Shan immediately expressed that with the addition of the new cannons, they would immediately go out to sea and become stronger. The previous Type 87 grenade launcher could shoot up to 1750 meters, and was called a mini-infantry cannon. It was powerful, but it was still a bit small. But now, with the recoilless cannon that could shoot up to 7,400 meters, they were naturally 100 times more confident. This meant that they could attack the enemy ships from a long distance. Before the people arrived, they were already scared. Then, when the Type 95 and Type 81 guns were used in close range, they would naturally be successful. Yang Chendong saw that everyone was full of confidence, and also felt that it was a bit funny. Using the weapons of the future to fight the cold weapons of the present, occasionally encountering cannons. At most the cannons were the kind that loaded from the muzzle and did not have any rifling inside the barrel. It was really not a challenge. The inspection at the Black Docks allowed Yang Chendong to have a better understanding of his own strength. The number of official members who passed the cold front examination had reached close to 70, and there were still some who were passing the examination or preparing for the examination. Counting from this, it was only a matter of time before he passed the 100 mark. Perhaps not long after, the number of people would reach a few hundred, or even more. At that time, he would have a certain level of self-protection. With the advanced weapons given to them, even if someone wanted to harm him, they would only be courting death. Of course, before all of this became a reality, he still had to keep a low profile, and even curry favor with some people. Thinking about it, the gift that he sent to head eunuch Wang Jin should have arrived at the capital, Beijing. The capital, also known as Shuntian Prefecture. At this moment, in a courtyard not far from the palace, the old butler Yang Hai saw the tense Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen was the eunuch in charge of the ceremony directorate under Ming Yingzong Zhu Qizhen. He was once the director of the Eastern Palace, serving the crown prince, who later became Emperor Yingzong. Even the emperor, Ming Yingzong, affectionately called him Mr. It could be said that he had a stable position and held great power. Chapter 22. One day, Wang Zhen saw that the founding emperor, Zhu Yuanzhang, had set up a plaque that read, "Officials are not allowed to interfere in government affairs." He was in a bad mood and ordered for it to be removed. The next day, everyone went to court and found that the founding emperor's letter was gone. However, they all remained silent. From this, one could see how powerful he was. Wang Zhen, date of birth unknown, was from Shaanxi's Yuzhou, present-day Hebei. He had once served the crown prince, Zhu Qizhen, in his studies. This person valued power and was especially concerned about how others viewed him. Thus, any official who was promoted had to give him a gift. Any official who returned to the capital also had to give him a gift. Otherwise, trouble would come knocking. Speaking of which, this was related to his background. During the final years of Yongle, the imperial court issued a decree. The general idea was that any official in the education bureau of each province or city who did not perform well could be transferred to the capital to become an official. There was such a good thing. If one could not make a name for themselves locally, they could actually be transferred to the capital to become an official. Of course not. The reason why no one cared was that the job they would do after being transferred to the capital was rather special: enter the palace to train female officials. What a joke. Even if this old man did not want to be an official, he could still be a commoner. Why would he want to be a eunuch in the palace? That's right, who would do such a stupid thing? However, there was someone who did it. He was Wang Zhen. He already had a wife and a child. Although he was not well off, he was not poor either. He could live his life peacefully. However, in his heart, there was an ambition that no one could understand. He was not sent to the palace to be a eunuch when he was young. Instead, he entered the palace after studying. He even entered the palace with a certain amount of debt. Since it was difficult for him to develop locally, he wanted to find another path. Needless to say, with his ability to observe people's expressions and patience, he really did make a name for himself. In the past, Yang Chendong did not know much about this person. However, he had a large warehouse with many historical books. Naturally, he found out about this person. After asking around, he found that it was indeed so. At that moment, Yang Chendong invited the old housekeeper, Ang Hai, to meet Wang Zhen. After all, Yang Hai had followed his master, Ang Rong, in the past and had seen the world. At that time, Wang Zhenyuan did not have the authority he had now. When he saw the three Yangs, he was always polite and courteous. It was appropriate for him to send Yang Hai, an old acquaintance, to present the gift. Yang Chendong's predecessor, Yang Dong, didn't know much about history. He also didn't know much about how things came to be. However, he had a large warehouse with books. There were also many ready-made books, materials, and even finished products for reference. Some things that didn't exist in the Ming Dynasty could be dismantled, or reassembled. This was his biggest advantage. Naturally, he could create many new things. In Wang Zhen's home in the capital, Yang Hai saw Wang Zhen with a respectful expression, and Wang Zhen was extremely pleased. Back then, in order to win the favor of Sanyang, he had to curry favor with Sanyang on the surface, obey everything, and pretend that he did not interfere in political affairs. Every time he went to the cabinet to deliver the emperor's decree, he would pretend to be very respectful and careful. He would always stand outside the door and not enter the pavilion, which deeply moved Sanyang. Later, when Wang Zhen came to deliver the decree, Sanyang broke the custom and specially invited Wang Zhen to sit in the room. Now, he needed to look up. Now that the steward of that person had changed from arrogance to deference in front of him, it was far from the arrogance he had when he followed Yang Rong around. He felt a burst of refreshing feeling. Butler Yang, speaking of which, we are old acquaintances. We have known each other for many years. Wang Zhen deliberately brought up the past to see what Yang Hai would say. Before coming, Yang Hai had already adjusted his attitude. In the past, when Master Yang Rong was still alive, he could still look down on others. However, 30 years had passed, and many things had changed. Yes, I have known eunuch Wang for many years. At that time, I could see that you were extraordinary. Sure enough, it was true. Some were only sighing, and even a little envious. These words made Wang Zhen feel very pleased after hearing them. The proudest thing for a person was to make those who looked down on him start to look up to him. And now, he had done it. How could he not be happy? Haha. After laughing contentedly, Wang Zhen looked at the things wrapped behind Yang Hai and asked casually, "Why did you come to see me?" Without the word eunuch, it gave off a very different feeling. However, Yang Hai acted as if he did not hear it and said respectfully, "It's like this. Our family's sixth young master admires eunuch Wang's talent and ability very much. This time, when he heard that this little one was coming to the capital, he prepared a gift early and asked me to send it to you as a token of appreciation." Yang family's sixth young master? Is that the person who made the toilet bowl and wrote 2 miscellaneous books? Unexpectedly, Wang Zhen had heard of Yang Chendong. Yang Hai immediately showed a flattered expression and said, "If our family's sixth young master knew that eunuch Wang still remembered him, he would be so happy that he would not be able to sleep." Ha ha ha. Wang Zhen, who was flattered, was very happy that Yang Rong's descendant respected him so much. This is nothing. Speaking of which, the sixth young master is quite talented and has made a lot of noise. You don't know, but now the palace has started to use the toilet bowl. Even the emperor said that it was good. Is that so? Then it must be because of eunuch Wang's recommendation. Yang Hai said without taking the credit. Looking at Yang Hai, who was so sensible, Wang Zhen was happy. He liked to deal with sensible people. However, he was now more curious about what the sixth young master of the Yang family would give him. He thought that such a person should be extraordinary. In time, Yang Hai felt Wang Zhen's gaze on the gift. Immediately, he turned around and opened the package. Suddenly, 2 clear mirrors and 2 sets of beautifully packaged cosmetics appeared in the hall. This is a mirror. It can clearly reflect every part of a person's body. The effect is many times better than a bronze-level mirror. Also, there are 2 sets of cosmetics. Once a woman uses them, she can stay young forever and look even younger and prettier. There were not many gifts, only 2 items and 4 pieces. However, no matter which one it was, it could be considered a valuable gift. This made Wang Zhen blink his eyes. Excitement was already written on his face. He knew about the mirror. A few months ago, the Jianghu prefectural magistrate presented it to the emperor. At that time, Ingzong was so happy that he even went to take a good look at it every day before the court. Some of the concubines in the harem also liked it. However, it was impossible to buy it even if they had money. In order to please the emperor, Wang Zhen used some methods. He sent people from the East Palace to look for it, but there was no news. Unexpectedly, there were 2 of them at once. How could he not be happy? As for the cosmetics that could preserve one's youth, it was even better. If he gave it to the emperor, those concubines would fight for it. At that time, wouldn't he be the one who made the biggest contribution? Exclaiming about the effects and benefits of these gifts, Wang Zhen was very happy. Good, good. But where did these things come from? In response to eunuch Wang's question, our young master knows a foreigner named John. He brought these things from the sea. Unfortunately, the journey was too long, so we only got these. Our sixth young master also said that if eunuch Wang likes them, he will find a way to send more to you in the future. Before coming, he had been told not to send too many good gifts. Otherwise, the effect would be greatly reduced. Of course, Yang Hai understood the meaning and knew how to say it. Hearing that these things came from the sea, Wang Zhen suddenly understood and nodded. He was wondering why there were so many people sent out, but there were no clues. It turned out that these things did not come from the great Ming Dynasty. The Ming Dynasty's sea route was cut off after Jianghu. As people kept mentioning the threat of the sea, fear of the sea became mainstream, and Wang Zhen was one of them. In his view, the army of the Ming Dynasty was naturally able to dominate the land, but when it came to the sea, there were too many unknowns. Now that he knew the origin of these goods, he valued these 2 gifts even more. These were things that came from afar, and it was rare. It also showed the importance of Yang Chendong's intentions. Good, good. Sixth young master is truly considerate. But do you have any requests? Wang Zhen was a smart person. It was precisely because of this that he did not believe that Yang Chendong, who had not even been to the capital, would want to send him gifts. As the saying goes, if one were to lower oneself to others, one must have a request. Seeing that Wang Zhen was in a good mood, Yang Hai knew that the time had come. He said, "The Yang clan's matriarch passed away not long ago. As the youngest son, the sixth young master has to stay at home to take care of the family, so he won't be coming to the capital for the time being. However, before the matriarch passed away, she had a wish. She hoped that the sixth young master could take over the old master's mantle, work for the court, and be loyal to the emperor. She also said that if there was a chance in the future, he would learn from eunuch Wang." Ha ha ha. Wang Zhen laughed heartily. He did not believe that a good person would be willing to learn from a eunuch like him. However, since he had accepted the gift, he had to do something. Furthermore, it was such a valuable gift that he could not take it for free. This was also a kind of professional integrity. Besides, this request was not too high. He just wanted an official position. Just based on the fact that his father was Yang Rong, an auxiliary minister of the 5 dynasties, his family should have been treated with evil. Alright, this duke understands. If there is a chance, this duke will ask the emperor for a job for the 6th young master. Thank you, eunuch Wang. In addition, the 6th young master's Yang Bao is about to enter the capital, but there are some people who criticize it, saying that some of the things written in it are not Confucian. But in truth, most of it records matters of loyalty to the emperor, as well as the glorious achievements of my great Ming dynasty. It is accompanied by a few fabricated stories to make people laugh. Speaking of which, this is just something that the 6th young master casually wrote. It has no other meaning than to make a name for himself. Sir, you also know that the 6th young master is only 16 this year. In addition, 20% of it belongs to eunuch Wang. Chapter 23. Yang Hai recalled that the Yang Bao had followed him into the capital, so he decided to foreshadow this matter and report it in advance. Of course, according to what Yang Qindong said, privately running a newspaper could be a big or small matter. It mainly depended on how it was said. Once it was just a storytelling book, it would give people a preconceived idea. As long as Wang Zhen approved of it, it would not be a big problem to implement it. It was just paying 20% of the benefits. In the long run, it was worth it. When he first heard Yang Qindong's instructions, Yang Hai was shocked by the 6th young master's generosity. He directly gave away 20% of the benefits. Only a person with great courage would be able to do it. He even saw the 6th young master's boldness from this matter. He hated that he was old and could not follow the 6th young master for too long. Otherwise, he would definitely bask in the glory of the 6th young master. But fortunately, his son Yang Neng was also capable and young. He could follow the 6th young master in the future. Presumably, he would not have to worry about food and clothing in the future. He told Wang Zhen about the Yang Bao and said that he would give 20% of the benefits. Suddenly, Wang Zhen's eyes narrowed and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Okay, I will pay attention to this matter. Yang Hai knew that since Wang Zhen said that he would pay attention to it, there would be no problem. He immediately expressed his gratitude again and then tactfully left. When there was no one else in the room, Wang Zhen's face returned to its serious state. Come. After the voice fell, a person flashed out of the dark room. He was wearing a flying fish robe and holding a spring-embroidered saber. He half knelt and said, I will listen to your orders. Ji Guang, immediately go and investigate the Yang Bao. See what it is, who is against it, and who is supporting it. Investigate clearly and report back to me. Wang Zhen's eyes narrowed into a line. Without investigation, there was no right to speak. He would not let things go just because he accepted some things from Yang Qindong. He believed in the conclusion of his own investigation. Ji Guang was his private party. He was originally the commander of Long Qing's right guard, Qianshi. Later, he was promoted to Governor Qianshi. Because it was convenient to use him, he was transferred to the position of Qianshi in the Brocade Guards, a lower third-rank official. It was worth mentioning that in the first month of that year, the hereditary position of eunuchs was officially implemented. Ingzong gave Wang Zhen's nephew, Wang Lin, the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qian Liang, Gao Rang's nephew, Gao Yu, Chao Jixiang's brother, Chao Zheng, and Kai Zhong's nephew, Kai Gu. The emergence of this system raised the status of the eunuchs to almost the same as the important ministers. Without a doubt, Wang Zhen was the boss of these people. Naturally, his subordinates would carry out his orders unconditionally and do their best. Wang Zhen wasn't worried about being deceived by Ji Guang's investigation. This was also because it was his first time dealing with Yang Qindong, so he had to be careful. This subordinate understands. Ji Guang replied, then retreated without any signs of life. Wang Zhen was left alone in the hall. He smiled and said, "The sixth young master, Yang Jitong, Yang Qindong. Interesting. If you abide by the law, I won't be stingy and give you a good fortune after accepting your gift." With Yang Hai's appearance in the capital, Yang Bao soon appeared here. In order to make it easier for the people in the capital to read, it started from the first issue. The appearance of Legend of the Condor Heroes and Xiao Li's flying dagger naturally attracted the attention of the people in the capital who were lacking in spiritual food. This was because of the geographical location. Yang Bao was already so famous in Jianghu, but because it was too far away from the capital, no one knew about it. This was unlike the modern age where the internet was so developed that even the smallest matter could be hyped up and made known to everyone. The sudden appearance of Yang Bao attracted the attention of many people, but at the same time, it was not well received by some people. They discussed in private about the nature of this report and what it could be used for. It was just that the emperor hadn't said anything, so they couldn't make up their minds and didn't know what to do. Yang Qindong, who had returned to Jianghu Prefecture from the Black Wharf, had been paying attention to the movements in the capital. Yang Bao was nothing more than a test. At this time, there was no intellectual property right, and there was no way to guide public opinion. He didn't know whether this thing could gain a foothold in the capital. But he knew that if the great Ming dynasty couldn't accept this, he had to be more careful and cautious in the future. It was even debatable whether he would have a trip to the capital in the future. Under Yang Qindong's attention, the wheel of history continued to turn as usual. On the 14th of July in the 11th year of the Jingtong dynasty, Yang Pu, the last Yang of the three Yangs, died. Yang Pu's death meant the end of the three Yangs era. Some of their original forces began to suffer a blow, and some forces that wanted to replace them began to stir. More than a month after Yang Pu's death, the incident began to break out. Unexpectedly, Yang Bao, which seemed to have gained a foothold in the capital, was the first to bear the brunt. On this day, in the main hall, there was a sudden condemnation against the descendants of Yang Rong. When Yang Rong was in power, he was known as Dong Yang. He was the Minister of Works, Assistant Minister, Grand Secretary, and other positions. Naturally, he had great power. Therefore, he promoted some people, but there were only so many positions, so he naturally offended a group of people. Because of this, many people were upset, but they didn't have a chance. Now that Yang Pu was dead and the three Yangs were in decline, there were naturally some people who hit him when he was down. Some people even mistakenly thought that their actions should be in accordance with Wang Zhen's wishes. Because in the third year of the Jingtong dynasty, there was a fierce struggle for power in the court. The leader of the eunuchs, Wang Zhen, took advantage of the child Yingzong's ignorance and companionship to lure him to play, and then presented him to his playmate to win his favor. With this favor, he went up against the three Yangs. This caused Grand Secretary Yang Shiqi to not attend court. When the Empress Dowager found out, she beat Wang Zhen up and ordered him to apologize to the Yang residents. Wang Zhen held a grudge in his heart and used his vicious methods to make a fuss about the son of the three Yangs. He sued the son of the second Yangs and his friends for taking bribes for personal gain, causing a huge uproar and ruining the reputation of the second Yangs. Under Wang Zhen's desperate investigation, the second Yangs died of anger and depression, leaving Yang Pu as the head to take charge of the court. Now that even Yang Pu was no longer around, wasn't it the best time to step on the descendants of the three Yangs? Yang Bao was the unlucky one that came to the muzzle of the gun. Niheng was one of the people who had been suppressed by the three Yangs. Perhaps his vile nature was seen through early on, but he, who felt good about himself, had always been suppressed. It wasn't until later on that he sucked up to Wang Zhen that he rose step by step, becoming the Minister of Imperial Affairs and Assistant Minister of Revenue, becoming a rank 3 official. Knowing that Wang Zhen once had a conflict with the Sanyang family, Nihan was eager to show off. He did not ask for Wang Zhen's permission in advance and suddenly attacked the Yang Pao in the court assembly. He even said that the private publication was a troublesome matter, and that it would lead to a disaster in the end. When the officials, including Ying Zong, were all confused, Niheng said that the reason why Yang Bao appeared and was discussed by everyone in the streets and alleys of the capital and was even sought after by a portion of people was because it had a dark background. This dark background was the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji, the Right Assistant Minister, Zhao Xian, and the others. It was because they had received Yang Rong's favor that they secretly supported Yang Bao in the name of repaying his kindness. Niheng's sudden move stunned Ying Zong, the officials, and even Wang Zhen. Everyone knew that Niheng had relied on Wang Zhen to get to his position. Because of this, everyone thought that it was Wang Zhen's idea. Many people immediately shut their mouths, afraid that they would be implicated. Wang Ji and Zhao Xian originally didn't want to speak, but this matter involved them, so they had no choice but to speak up. Niheng, you are slandering me. It's only because you did things unfairly that I couldn't help but say a few words to you. You are taking revenge here. Your actions are too vulgar. Besides, when have I ever had any contact with the 6th young master of the Yang family? I don't even know him, so what you are saying is nonsense. Zhao Xian walked out from the group with a face full of indignation. Many people knew that there was a grudge between Niheng and Zhao Xian, the director of the Ministry of Appointments. Niheng framed Zhao Xian because of his grudge. Yang Bao was just an innocent bystander. However, there was one person who saw it very clearly. He was the Ministry of Personnel Minister Wang Ji. Wang Ji had replaced Guo Gu as the Ministry of Personnel Minister in the 8th year of Jingtong and was in charge of all officials. Since ancient times, the Ministry of Personnel had a saying that officials were one level higher. Those who were able to occupy this position were all cautious and conscientious people. This time, he was suddenly reprimanded by Neihen in front of the court because he had a good relationship with Zhao Xian, the director of the Ministry of Appointments. Since he had made a move on this person, if he did not take care of himself, it would not be long before he would be implicated by the counterattack. Thus, he had implicated himself. After thinking through the crux of the matter, he was worthy of being a minister. He didn't argue with Niheng like Zhao Xian. Instead, he stood out and said solemnly, I did not know about the matter of Yang Bao. It's just that I've read a few magazines recently, and it's just that there are 2 interesting stories in them. They also talked about the might and glory of our dynasty and did not do anything to harm the country. I once thought that the person who created this newspaper was very talented. Later, I learned that it was done by the youngest son of Scholar Yang. I was even more impressed that Duke Yang had a successor. Thus, I boldly suggest that the court should promote more talented young people to be used by the country. After speaking, Wang Ji placed the ceremonial tablet on the ground. Then, he knelt down and buried his head deep in the ground. He saw the crux of the matter with one glance. Didn't you, Niheng, attack me with the dark background of Yang Bao? Then I will solve the problem from the root and clear the name of Yang Bao. Let's see what other tricks you have. Chapter 24. As the Minister of the Ministry of Appointments, Wang Ji had the right to recommend someone. Recommending a talented young student in front of the imperial court was the most appropriate move. In addition, Yang Chendong was born in the Yang family. This move could show his virtuous reputation after taking care of his friends. This move was really impeccable. The move to open up another path. Wang Ji's words made Niheng freeze on the spot, and he was somewhat at a loss. He did not expect that the other party would avoid the important and dwell on the trivial, directly pointing out the cause of the matter. This was completely different from what he had thought before. Niheng thought that whether it was Wang Ji or Zhao Xian, they would first find a way to escape and clarify their relationship with Yang Rong. In this way, it was bound to arouse the dissatisfaction of some of the pro-Yang faction in the imperial court. At that time, he only needed to insist that the other party had something to do with it. After all, the influence of the three Yangs was deep and wide. Who in the imperial court could say that they had nothing to do with it? This was called yellow mud falling into the crotch of one's pants. Even if it was not shit, it was shit. Who would have thought that the other party did not evade their relationship with Yang Rong? Perhaps they could not evade it, so they simply took the opportunity to recommend the sixth young master of the Yang family. As a result, his wishful thinking was completely ruined. Wang Ji was worthy of being a minister. Avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial, and opening up another path completely ruined Niheng's goal. This also made him feel that the situation was not right. He had to look at Wang Zhen, who was standing next to the emperor, for help. At this time, Wang Zhen's old face was stiff, but his heart was abnormally angry. Ji Guang had already investigated the matter of Yang Bao. The result was naturally that it was a story, and a serial article that told a continuous story. Although it recorded some miscellaneous knowledge, it had nothing to do with the system of eunuchs. For a literary magazine like this, there was no threat at all. It could even be said that it was a business method. At least for a few months, it had made a lot of money for Wang Zhen. This made Wang Zhen very happy. Because this was different from bribery, this was a share of the money that he had obtained with his own ability. It was regarded as a legitimate source of money. Wang Zhen was secretly happy about this. And just a few days ago, he even received 2 copies of Yang Bao from the people and gave them to the emperor. Ying Zong was also attracted by The Legend of the Condor Heroes. After all, Ying Zong was still a child, only 19 years old, and he also liked stories of gratification and revenge. Because of this matter, Ying Zong even asked his teacher, Wang Zhen, to find the complete draft of the condor shooting. He wanted to read it to his heart's content. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he deliberately put in a few good words for Yang Qindong, so that he did not accept these gifts in vain. First, let Ying Zong have such a person in his heart and slowly form a good impression of him. At that time, being promoted to an official would be a matter of course. Seeing that everything was going smoothly, Nehen suddenly jumped out and almost ruined his plan. How could he not be angry? Of course, what made Wang Zhen even angrier was that Nehen did not inform him before doing this. This was completely an act of his own volition. It could also be seen that Nehen did not care about him at all. Since that was the case, why would he care about it? Now that he saw Nihen's pleading eyes, he really wanted to slap him and have the Eastern Palace guards arrest him. His heart was filled with hatred, but Wang Zhen could not do this. Everyone knew that Nehen had sided with him. If something happened to him today, wouldn't people think that he was weak? In this way, it was inevitable that there would be sudden changes, and it would be detrimental to the peace. Just because his heart was filled with hatred, it did not mean that Wang Zhen would not punish Nehen. At the very least, he wanted to teach him a lesson through this matter. Therefore, he turned around and said to Ying Zong with a smile, "Your Majesty, Minister Wang is right. The 6th son of the Yang family, Yang Jitong, for the sake of the reader's pleasure, from now on, he will only be called Yang Qindong, is indeed a talent. If such a person can be used by the court, it will be a great thing. As for Nehen and Zhao Xian, roaring in the court is really disgraceful. They can each be beaten 5 times with a rod and thrown out of the court." Good, teacher is right. This emperor also has the same thoughts. Come, drag Nehen and Zhao Xian away and beat them 5 times with a rod each. Ying Zong sat up straight and spoke with the appearance of a wise emperor. As soon as he finished speaking, the brocade guards came forward and dragged the 2 of them out. From beginning to end, the 2 of them did not speak. Zhao Xian did not dare. He was afraid that if he shouted, it would only make the rod more severe. However, he was still in a state of confusion. From Wang Zhen's words, he finally understood that his master seemed to have some relationship with Yang Qindong. It was hateful that he didn't even understand before making a move. This was simply asking for trouble and even asking for trouble. The 2 of them were dragged away. The handsome and imposing Ying Zong's gaze fell on the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji. Minister Wang, this person was recommended by you. What position should we give Yang Chendong? Because he had read the book, Condor Shooting, Ying Zong had a good impression of Yang Chendong. This matter was suggested by Wang Ji, and Wang Zhen agreed. How could he object? Wang Ji raised his head, and a few titles flashed through his mind. Speaking of which, Yang Chendong was still too young. He was only 16 years old, and it was very difficult for him to be given an official position. Today was just a coincidence. However, since the emperor asked, he needed to give an explanation. He said, Your Majesty, this subject believes that Yang Chendong is very intelligent. He became a scholar at the age of 13. He should be able to take up the position of governor of Jianghu Prefecture. After he is done with his family, he can be transferred to the capital. The governor of Jianghu Prefecture was a 9th-rank official in charge of administrative and civil affairs. However, there was no mention of the previous governor being transferred away. This meant that this position was originally just a position without any real power. It could also be called a scattered official. The biggest difference was that there was an additional official position. Yes, Minister Zhuqing. Ying Zong nodded his head. Towards a 9th-rank official, he really couldn't bring up the slightest bit of interest. The court was dismissed. At this time, Naiheng and Zhao Xian had been sent out of the palace. The officials also acted as if nothing had happened and returned home. However, what they did not know was that history had changed a little. In history, Naiheng had a grudge with the Ministry of Personnel's Dr. Zhao Xian. He framed Wang Ji and Assistant Minister Chao Yi, and they were both imprisoned. They both suffered a little. Later, Ying Zong treated them leniently, and Wang Ji and Chao Yi were reinstated. They only took Zhao Xian and Naiheng's salary. However, because of the appearance of Yang Bao, Naiheng took action in advance and did not implicate Chao Yi. Fortunately, this change was not very big. At least, the general direction of history did not change. Otherwise, Yang Chendong would have a headache. The officials returned home. The Minister of Rights, Hu Ming, also returned home in his official sedan. As soon as he entered the residence, Hu Ming called the housekeeper and asked, Go find Yan, and ask for a copy of Yang Bao. Bring it to my study. Hu Ming had heard about the Yang Bao before, but he did not care about it. In his view, it was far from the orthodox way of Confucius and Mencius, and he disdained to hear about it. However, what happened in the court today made him curious about the Yang Bao. Thinking that his granddaughter had talked about it more than once, he prepared to find a copy to read. The housekeeper quickly went to the young Mrs. courtyard in the backyard. He met the young Mrs. maid, Xiao Qing, and told her that the master wanted to read the Yang Bao. Wait. Xiao Qing was a capable maid. The young girl in yellow was always smiling. Her skin was whiter than snow, and her eyes were like a pool of clear water. She turned and ran to the young Mrs. boudoir. In the room, there was a 14 or 15-year-old girl. Her delicate and elegant face was rosy, and her sandalwood lips were pink. It was inevitable that she would be lost in reverie. At this moment, she was holding a black newspaper and reading it. From time to time, the corners of her mouth would curl up slightly, showing the joy in her heart. Young Mississippi, perhaps because Xiao Qing ran a little faster, she was panting as soon as she entered the boudoir. Her large chest was constantly rising and falling with her rapid breathing. Xiao Qing, what's wrong? What made you so anxious? The young girl seemed to be complaining, but after she finished speaking, she softly leaned forward and said, Could it be that you've taken a fancy to a young and handsome man? After she finished speaking, the young girl couldn't help but giggle. The maid, Xiao Qing, frowned and her face fell. She said with an unyielding expression, Young miss, you're making fun of Xiao Qing again. I've already said that I will follow young miss for the rest of my life. I will not marry. Ah. Don't tell me you want to warm the bed of my future husband? Bah. You really don't know shame. The young girl was Hu Yan, the granddaughter of the Minister of Rights, Hu Ming. What? When she realized that she was being teased by young Miss again, Xiao Qing wasn't going to let it go. She immediately stretched out her slender hands and tickled Hu Yan's armpits. Although this was the social practice of the time, the personal maid who married into the family could actually warm the bed of the new son-in-law on behalf of their young mistress. However, there were some things that couldn't be said. How could a thin-skinned person endure it? Only Hu Yan and Xiao Qing, who had grown up together, could make such a joke. If there was a trace of misunderstanding between the master and the maid, such a joke would only increase the conflict between them. Xiao Qing's hand moved, and for a moment, the two girls were playing together. Waves of giggles could be heard incessantly. When the steward, who was waiting outside, heard this, he helplessly shook his head. He knew that Xiao Qing, this careless maid, must have forgotten her mission. He couldn't help but lightly cough a few times. Ah! When she heard the steward's voice, Xiao Qing quickly stopped moving her hands. She seemed to have thought of something and said, "The steward is still waiting outside." "Young miss, old master wants to read Yang Bao." "What?" Hu Yan also blocked the hand that was about to sneak up on Xiao Qing's armpits. She asked in disbelief. Chapter 25. Yang Bao had been in the capital for quite some time. However, Hu Yan, who rarely left the house, didn't know about it at first. At that time, it was very important for women not to leave the house. But one day, when she entered her father's study to help clean, she accidentally saw a copy of Yang Bao on the table. Hu Yan's father was Hu Zhao's eldest son, Hu Changning. At that time, he held the position of protector of the Brocade Guard and was a fourth-rank official. As a member of the Brocade Guard, it was necessary for him to have political awareness and vigilance. For something as new as Yang Bao, it was impossible for him not to study it. Therefore, he brought a copy of Yang Bao back home. However, other than the wonderful story and some general knowledge about life, he really couldn't see any negative thoughts in it. Therefore, he casually put it on the desk. He didn't want to become a treasure in the eyes of women. Speaking of a treasure, it naturally referred to the wonderful stories inside. This was also the tragedy of society at that time. Women only paid attention to the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. They could only read women's commandments, internal discipline, analects of women, and other boring books. They had long been bored of reading similar books. Suddenly, there was an edition of Shooting Condor and Xiao Li's Flying Dagger. Among them, the silly Guo Jing and the affectionately Xuanhuan made Hu Yan unable to put them down. She felt as if she had seen another world. It was full of novelty, curiosity, and amazement. Soon, this issue of Yang Bao was finished. She could even recite it backwards. At this moment, Hu Yan only hated that there was only this one issue. Moreover, this was neither the first nor the last issue. This story really had no beginning and no end, and it made people unhappy. This unhappiness quickly turned into anxiety. She anxiously waited for an entire afternoon. When her father finished his work and returned home in the evening, she anxiously begged him, saying that she wanted to read more of Yang Bao. Hu Changning was the eldest son of the Hu clan. He was deeply loved by Hu Xiao and greatly favored by the emperor. Because of this, he entered the important department of the Brocade Guard. Don't be fooled by his stern face when he was working, giving people a feeling that strangers shouldn't get close to him. In fact, he was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He was especially fond of his little daughter. Faced with Hu Yan's seemingly unreasonable pestering, Hu Zhangning finally gave in and promised to bring more copies of Yang Bao home. With Hu Zhangning's guarantee, Hu Yan was happy. Her father even used his privilege to find the first issue of Yang Bao, which satisfied her request. The story finally had an end. But because Yang Bao had only been developed in the capital for a short period of time and had yet to reach the finale, she could only wait in torment. The Yang Bao was not published once a day, but once every 5 days. One could finish reading the entire Yang Bao in less than an hour. The following 4 days would be a long wait. During this time, Hu Yan also had some thoughts and went to research the person who wrote this story. It was written very clearly in Yang Bao that the Condor Shooter and Xiao Li's Flying Dagger Department were written by the same author. It was Yang Qindong, the youngest and 6th young master of the Yang clan. Hu Yan had heard her grandfather talk about this person. It was said that he had become a scholar at the age of 13. At that time, Hu Xiao was very envious of him at home, saying that Yang Rong had a successor. Hu Yan's memory was not bad. Just by hearing this, she had some impression. Since Yang Qindong was the author, Hu Yan couldn't help but be curious about how this person's brain worked. What was in it? How could he come up with such a wonderful story? She wanted to know more about Yang Qindong, so she went to her grandfather's place, hoping to find out more about him. What kind of person was Hu Xiao? It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a shrewd person. In history, to be able to hold the position of Minister of Rights during the Ming Xuanzong dynasty, he had experienced the 4 dynasties of Emperor Ying, Emperor Jing, and Emperor Xian for more than 30 years without falling. How could ordinary people compare to him? When his granddaughter, Hu Yan, appeared, just a few words from her made him feel a trace of a different flavor. He also asked a few words and found out about the Yang Bao. Only then did he know why his granddaughter wanted to know about the Yang clan's 6th young master. This was the first time Hu Xiao heard the name Yang Bao. However, he had never paid much attention to it. What kind of good thing could a 15 or 16-year-old youth write? What kind of thing was worthy of his attention? Therefore, even though his granddaughter had recommended it several times, he had never looked at it. Today's court assembly had started with Yang Bao and ended with Yang Bao. Yang Qindong had become the governor of Jianghu Prefecture at the age of 16. Although it was a very small 9th-rank official, it was undoubtedly an official's position. Moreover, he did not rely on his family to obtain it. This naturally piqued Hu Xiao's interest, and he wanted to see what was written in Yang Bao. In particular, Hu Xiao's sharp senses told him that Wang Zhen seemed to have a good impression of the Yang clan's 6th young master. This was the most inconceivable thing to him. Who in the court did not know about the conflicts between Wang Zhen and San Yang? In the past, whenever it involved San Yang, no matter who it was, they would be trampled on by Wang Zhen. However, as Yang Rong's son, the most direct descendant of his family, he was fine. Could it be that Wang Zhen had changed his strategy? Or did the root cause appear in Yang Qindong? Hu Xiao carefully considered the cause and effect, and found that it should be the latter. This was because a few days ago, an official who was on good terms with San Yang had been arrested by Dong Shi. If Wang Zhen had such intentions, he should not have changed his mind so quickly. If that was the case, then Yang Qindong was somewhat interesting. He was clearly Yang Rong's son, but he could obtain Wang Zhen's support. How did he do it? Of course, Hu Xiao did not believe that Yang Qindong had done everything by himself. He guessed that there must be some expert. Who was this person? This really piqued his curiosity. He asked the butler to find Yang Bao to see if he could find any clues from it. In Mrs. Room, Hu Yan immediately became happy after knowing that the maid Xiao Qing was not joking. Great, grandfather also wants to read Yang Bao? Then I'll send it to him immediately. There was a reason why Hu Yan was so happy. She had asked Xiao Qing to go out and find out that Yang Bao first appeared in Yang Qindong's hometown, Jianghu Mansion, and Yang Qindong was there. It was later spread to the capital. She also heard that Xiao Li's Flying Dagger and Xiao Li's Condor had been published before Yu Jianning. They seemed to have finished their drafts, and even the whole book seemed to have been published. For this matter, Hu Xiao had asked his father, Hu Changming, more than once to send someone to Jianghu Mansion to buy 2 copies of the 2 completed books. However, his father refused. In his opinion, Yang Bao was published once every 5 days in the capital, and they could slowly read it. Moreover, it was a miscellaneous book. Girls should be more mature and not always want to listen to novel stories. After that, Hu Yan was angry for several days. However, she knew that her father was very generous to let her read Yang Bao once every 5 days, so she really did not dare to ask too much. But now, her grandfather wanted to read Yang Bao, which was equal to an opportunity. As long as she seized it, she might be able to read the 2 complete books in advance. That was really great. Then, Hu Yan took out several well-preserved copies of Yang Bao, hurried out of the backyard, and went straight to her grandfather's study. After a while, Hu Yan's coquettish voice came out of the study. "Grandfather, these 2 stories are very interesting. For example, Shao Li's Condor is about the struggle between the Han people and the Mongolian Yuan Empire. It shows a kind of national integrity, but I don't know what the ending is." Blinking her beautiful big eyes, Hu Yan had an aggrieved look on her face. Hu Shao shook his head gently. How could he not see that his granddaughter was playing hard to get? She wanted to take the opportunity to ask him to get the complete books of Shao Li's Flying Dagger and Shao Li's Flying Dagger. He had heard that the complete books had appeared in Jianghu before. Although there were not many of them, they could not be considered too few. At least for someone like Hu Shao who had been in the officialdom for decades, if he wanted to get it, he could find a way. However, Hu Shao still did not have the intention to agree. He wanted to see how Yang Bao was first. Just like that, with his granddaughter sighing from time to time, Hu Chang just treated it as a joke. He sat in the armchair and slowly read Yang Bao. However, only he himself knew what he was really thinking. This scene was not just happening in the Hu residence. After today's morning court, Hu knew how many important ministers and officials in the capital began to search for Yang Bao. While they were trying to understand it, no one knew what they were thinking. Others might still be watching and thinking about the deeper meaning of this scene in the morning court. But one person did not have the time to think about this, nor did they know what was happening in the imperial court. He was currently giving Tiger's Mane his last lesson. In short, the intelligence department is the clairvoyant and the clairvoyant. If they can know what is going on ahead of time, they can have more time to deal with the problem. Often, they can turn the tables. After saying this, Yang Qindong patted Tiger's Mane on the shoulder, his eyes filled with hope and expectation. The establishment of the Security Bureau was the matter that Yang Qindong had been paying the most attention to recently. And intelligence was of the utmost importance. Intelligence warfare referred to the confrontation of intelligence systems between the enemy and our side in order to achieve military victory and protect our side's cases and interests. Obtaining an advantage in intelligence was an important guarantee for military victory. Just like the Ming Dynasty's Eastern Faction Guards and the Imperial Secret Service, when they were at their most powerful, could the Emperor know what his subordinates were doing last night? Were they happy or disappointed? Did they drink when they were happy? Did they sigh when they were disappointed? Chapter 26. Being familiar with all the situations of the staff played a very positive role in better controlling them and understanding them. Yang Qindong wanted to establish the Security Bureau, first of all, for his own safety, and to use this department for his own use. Naturally, the person in charge became the top priority. After thinking about it, Tiger's Mane was chosen. Not for anything else, but because of his loyalty. Yang Qindong had no doubt that if someone wanted to kill him, Tiger's Mane would be like a motionless wall, blocking in front of him. If he couldn't trust the person who accompanied him since childhood, then who in the world could really make him feel at ease and truly believe? Tiger's Mane was chosen, and then he was singled out by Yang Qindong and trained for a long time. At the same time, Yang San was also trained. This person's character was calm and taciturn. In some ways, such a character was suitable for intelligence work, so he was trained as Tiger's Mane's deputy. Because the two of them were ignorant about intelligence, Yang Qindong taught them step by step, and it took them 2 months to finally give them a deeper understanding of intelligence issues and how to operate. At this point, the Security Bureau was established, and Tiger's Mane became the first director, and Yang San was the deputy director. For the time being, there were only 2 of them in the entire Security Bureau. But Yang Qindong believed that it wouldn't take long for this department to grow. In order for this day to come sooner, he took out 10,000 taels of silver at once to show his support for this day. Many things were on the right track, such as Yang Bao and the Four Seas restaurant, which could be described as making a lot of money every day. However, even so, compared to the gains of Gao Xiong's navy, it was still a small matter. Robbery is always the fastest way to make money, this is an indisputable fact. With money, naturally, you have to do what you like to do, what you should do. What he liked to do was naturally to breathe freely. He wanted to enjoy everything as much as possible while also bringing his influence to the world. Leaving his name in the annals of history was the goal of many people. Speaking of which, Yang Chendong did not have any ill feelings towards Great Ming. Compared to other dynasties, it was still much better. Compared to the political marriage between the Han and the Tang, the alliance between the Tang and the Song, they showed their unyielding character. They did not engage in political marriage, did not compensate, did not cede land, and did not pay tribute. The Son of Heaven guards the gates of the country, and the monarch dies for the country. Just how heroic was this? Everyone who heard this couldn't help but tremble in excitement. Yang Chendong naturally admired such a country. Unfortunately, prosperity was followed by decline. Ever since Ingzong's Tumu Castle incident, the Ming dynasty had entered the middle of its decline. Towards the end, he was overthrown by the commoners who did not have enough to eat. In the end, he allowed a few 100,000 people to become the emperor, ruling over the Han people for over 200 years. Later on, when the Eight-Nation Alliance entered Beijing, the Qing government was unable to cede land and pay compensation, causing China to suffer a great loss. These were all historical events. However, since Yang Chendong had accidentally come here, he naturally would not allow such things to happen again. He wanted to change everything as much as possible. He wanted to find a way to make Wuxia stronger and even make it the true center of the world. One day, every Chinese person would be able to walk out with their head held high. Whenever he introduced himself as a Huaxian to others, he would receive heartfelt respect and reverence from others. At that time, he would not let down the heavens, allowing him to live another life. Of course, doing all of this was extremely difficult. Yang Chendong understood how big the world was much better than the people of the Ming dynasty. However, it was because he understood that he had confidence. It was because of the weapons in the warehouse that were hundreds of years more advanced. When a person had enough power, it was terrifying. This was because with just a thought, the commoners would suffer. If they were not careful, they would become sinners for eternity. On the other hand, if such power was used to benefit the commoners and the country, it would also play an extremely positive role. Yang Chendong's idea was the latter. He hoped that through his own efforts, he could change the outcome of the Ming dynasty being destroyed in a few hundred years. He also wanted to change the situation where the Han people were slaves. All of this would undoubtedly be a lofty goal, and he would need to put in a lot of effort to achieve it. Taking advantage of the Ming dynasty's maritime ban, he had worked hard to build a powerful navy. Now, he had also worked hard to establish the Security Bureau. Fortunately, Tiger's Mane and Yang San were both diligent and eager to learn. They carried forward the spirit of not being ashamed to ask for help. This allowed them to learn a lot in the past 2 months, and their understanding of security and intelligence had reached a new level. At this time, Yang Chendong had to think more about his own safety. This was because he was not unknown. It was just that once he walked the path of power, he could only move forward and not turn back. Otherwise, it would be as if he had stepped into a bottomless abyss, and not even his bones would be left. He took out 10,000 taels of silver and handed it to Tiger's Mane. He said, "You should familiarize yourself with your work as soon as possible, and then recruit people. Remember what I taught you before. Don't underestimate the role of any one person. Often, big things are caused by small people. Perhaps a street gangster, a peddler, a street sweeper, or even a beggar will play a key role in certain situations. Therefore, the people you use are destined to not stick to one pattern." Do you understand the meaning of this sentence? Young master, we understand. What you mean is that as long as people are useful to us, we can rope them in. Even those useless people, as long as they have ambitions, can be used as our hidden pawns. Who knows when they will be activated, and then they will play an unimaginable role. Tiger's Mane thought about what the sixth young master had said and taught him and summarized his answer. Very good. He gave them an encouraging look. All right, you can leave now. Don't be too anxious. Think about what to do next. Once you have decided on something, don't worry about it. Don't be afraid of spending money. The young master doesn't lack that. Yes. Tiger's Mane and Yang San left with excited expressions. How could this not be their chance? To be able to catch the young master's attention was a great opportunity in itself. After the two left, Xiao Yin appeared in a flash, as if she had been prepared. She brought a pot of freshly boiled tea to Yang Chendong. Young master, you must be thirsty after talking for so long. Come and drink some tea. This is good tea that the young master spent a lot of money to get from the capital. All right, then drink some good flower tea. Then hurry up and write the smiling, proud wanderer. Yang Chendong, who had already seen through Xiao Yin's intentions, laughed heartily. This caused the girl's face to turn red. After The Legend of the Condor Heroes and Xiao Li's Flying Dagger, Yang Chendong wrote the third novel, The Smiling, Proud Wanderer. It was Master Jin Yang's later work, and its narrative had already reached the pinnacle of perfection. The Smiling, Proud Wanderer involved countless scenes, characters, and all kinds of martial artists fighting. But after being written, the scenes changed according to the mood. There were endless changes, but they were all suitable for life. The core of The Smiling, Proud Wanderer was the struggle for power in the martial arts world. In order to achieve this goal, the author seized the Wuxia Sword Manual and Sunflower Manual. The work praised chivalry, benevolence, wealth and honor, and the noble spirit of unyielding might. Once this book was published, it suppressed the Condor Heroes and Xiao Li's Flying Dagger, becoming the object and goal of everyone in Jianghu Prefecture. Among them, young Fu was laughing so hard that his eyes almost couldn't be seen. The Four Seas restaurant expanded again, swallowing up 2 neighboring restaurants. But it was still difficult to find a restaurant. Although he could only get 30% of the profits, he still earned more in a month than he did in a year. Once The Smiling, Proud Wanderer was published, Yang Chendong became an influential figure again. Now in Jianghu Prefecture, even the children who had just started to understand things knew of his great name. It could be seen that his influence was widespread. While everyone was talking about the Smiling, Proud Wanderer, the open-minded and unruly Ling Huchong, the beautiful and shrewd Ren Yingying, the treacherous and cunning Yu Buchuan, the rebellious and scheming Ren Wishing, the pure and lovesick Yi Lin, the modest and strange Chong Su, and so on, the imperial court's appointment arrived. The news of the Yang clan's 6th young master, the founder of Yang Bao, the author of The Condor Heroes, The Smiling, Xiao Li's Flying Dagger, and The Smiling, Proud Wanderer, was appointed as the governor of Jianghu Prefecture by the emperor. His official rank was 9th rank. The 6th young master of the Yang clan, who was only 16 years old, actually had an official position early on. It was said that the emperor had discussed this appointment with the various officials during the morning court session. Even some 3rd or 4th rank officials might not have such an honor. Then, this 9th rank official's status is really too high. Even some 3rd or 4th rank officials might not have such an honor. Thinking of Yang Chendong's age, it could be said that his future was limitless. Therefore, once the appointment was announced, the Yang clan's old residence's gate was trampled flat by the nobles of Jianghu Prefecture. Some even found matchmakers, wanting to marry their daughters and relatives' daughters to the 6th young master. It could be seen that there were really a lot of smart people. Everyone wanted to invest in a potential stock, hoping to get more returns in the future. In the front courtyard of the Yang clan's old residence, Yang Hai was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. As an elder of the Yang clan, he had personally experienced the Yang clan's rise and fall. Especially when the mistress, Yang Liushi, passed away, the one she couldn't forget was the young 6th young master. But who would have thought that in just over a year, Yang Chendong would be so promising? He had an official position at the age of 16. Even when his old home was still alive, it couldn't compare. And today's prosperous scene in the Yang clan's courtyard was probably something that only happened when the old master was in his golden age. Chapter 27. For a moment, Yang Hai was grinning from ear to ear. He knew that it was because he had gone to the capital, met Wang Zhen, and gave him a gift. But wasn't that what the young master was thinking? Compared to other young people, the sixth young master's calmness was definitely rare. Compared to Yang Hai, who was standing there laughing foolishly, the maid Xiao Yin's expression became very ugly. Especially when some of the matchmakers who had come to play matchmaker saw Xiao Yin ask the sixth young master if he had any intention of marrying a wife. Her face turned red with anger. If not for her face and not wanting to dampen everyone's spirits on this joyous day, she would have chased them away. At the moment, the Yang family's old residence was very lively, but as the person involved, Yang Qindong, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and the other servants had already gone to the Yamen of Jianghu Prefecture to pay a visit to the prefect, Li Daotong. Li Daotong was a jinshi at the end of the Yongle period of Qingzu. After a lot of hard work, he was appointed as the prefect of Jianghu Prefecture, a fourth-rank official. It was equivalent to the secretary of the municipal committee and the mayor of a modern city. When Li Daotong received the news that Yang Qindong had suddenly sent an invitation to visit, he immediately put down the brush he was writing on and said to the housekeeper, "Please." In the entire Jianghu Prefecture, the number of people who could receive Li Daotong's "please" could be counted on two hands. But when it came to people younger than 30 years old, there was no doubt that only Yang Qindong had such qualifications. In the guest room, Li Daotong was sitting precariously. Not long after, Yang Qindong, dressed in a green robe, walked in. When he entered the hall and saw Li Daotong, he quickly bowed and said, "Subordinate Yang Qindong greets Lord Li. Prefect Yang, please rise." Li Daotong narrowed his eyes and stood up, reaching out his hand to support Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong smiled and used this force to straighten his body. No matter what, now that he was in Jianghu Mansion, there were too many things he needed the other party to take care of. He had to give the other party enough face. Li Daotong was confident in his status. Being able to help a ninth-rank official up was already giving him enough face. Speaking of which, it was nothing more than a case of a man flattering a man. Magistrate Li also knew that Yang Qindong had an official position at such a young age, so his future would be bright. Now he was being courteous to him, but it was just to get some good karma in the future. Yang Qindong, who was given a seat, declined with a smile. Then, he sat down on a chair and began to talk about his own affairs. "Lord Li, this lowly official's mother has just passed away for more than a year. Her mourning period is not over yet. Please understand." I understand. Your mother was a woman with a title of nobility. Her passing on to the West, this official is also very sad. Governor Yang's filial piety is a matter of course, so there's nothing to worry about. How could Li Daotong not see that this so-called position of governor was originally a non-official position? If he could not understand his superior's intentions and ordered him to start working now, he would be criticized by others. Yang Rong was one of the imperial court's auxiliary ministers. There were countless disciples and former officials. As one of the nobility, Li Daotong should take care of his family. Yang Qindong did this for this reason. He did not want to get involved in some tedious matters. He had been watching the development of the Ming dynasty coldly. At present, he did not want to get involved, so how could he have the intention to serve? Therefore, this trip was to express his modesty and respect. The first thing he did after becoming an official was to pay a visit to his superior. If others knew about this, they would only say that he was sensible and knew the rules. Secondly, he would give up all his functions and go home to be an independent person. It was the most important thing to prepare for his big event. It would not be a waste of time. Now that he had obtained Yang Qindong's approval, Yang Qindong was happy and naturally wanted to express something. He immediately took out a set of L'Oréal women's cosmetics and placed it on the table. He did not know why such women's products would appear in the warehouse. Perhaps it was to serve the families of some officers. However, since he had discovered it, he naturally wanted to use it to the best of his ability. Li Daodong's eyes lit up when he saw the set of exquisite white boxes in front of him. As the local magistrate, he knew that Yang Qindong's item would not be simple. He asked excitedly, "Magistrate Yang, may I know what this is?" Replying to official Li, "This item is called cosmetics. When used on a woman's body, it has the effect of preserving her youth. In the past, I had people send 2 sets to the current emperor. This is the 3rd set." Yang Qindong smiled as he explained the use and origin of this item. Li Daotong immediately became excited when he heard that this was the 3rd set in addition to the emperor's 2 sets. Coincidentally, Magistrate Li attached great importance to relationships, especially to his wife who had gone through hardships with him. It was a pity that she was getting older, so it was inevitable that her beauty would be greatly reduced. With this set of products, it could not be said to solve the real problem, but it could be said to be a testimony of one's heart. When he thought about how no one other than the emperor had used this item, he felt even more grateful. In his excitement and happiness, Li Daotong changed the way he addressed him. "Qindong, I've troubled you. Why don't we have lunch here?" How could he refuse a superior's invitation? Yang Qindong smiled and nodded in agreement. At the same time, he motioned to Tiger's Mane, who was standing to the side. Immediately, he placed some MSG, cooking wine, and other things that could not be bought with money on the table. Li Daotong had eaten at the Four Seas restaurant before. With his status, when he asked why the food was so delicious, Yang Fu naturally did not hide it. Therefore, he knew the effects of this item, but it was not good to directly ask the Yang family for it. Now that Yang Qindong had taken the initiative to take out these things, he felt that the other party was too good at dealing with people. He was not inferior to his father at all. For a moment, Li Daotong could not help but become cautious and even nervous when he spoke, as if he was afraid of saying something wrong. On the other hand, Yang Qindong smiled when he should and spoke when he should. He did not seem to be reserved at all. As the saying goes, when one is courteous to others, one must have a request. When one person asked for another person's help, it was inevitable that they would be in a disadvantageous position first. Naturally, they would not be able to speak even if they wanted to. However, Yang Qindong did not want to take advantage of Li Daodong's interest. Even if he did not come today, with the name of Ding Yu at home, no one could do anything about it. Since he was so calm, it was natural when they got along, and he even had the intention of gaining the upper hand. This scene was seen by Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and the others who were standing at the side. Everyone was amazed. They admired the 6th young master's calmness and nonchalance. Yang Qindong had an official position, and since then, he acted more freely. The people of the Yang family's old mansion also felt proud of him. When they walked out on the street, their chests were raised a little. From Magistrate Li's mansion to the Yang family's old mansion, Yang Qindong continued to keep a low profile. Even when guests came, he recommended them on the grounds that he was not feeling well. However, only the old butler Yang Hai, Xiao Yin, and a few other people who were familiar with him knew that the 6th young master was not in the old mansion at all, but had left. As for where he went, they would never ask. In their eyes, the 6th young master was a person who did great things. Everything he did was not something they could explain. At the Black Wharf by the Sea of Fuzhou, Yang Qindong had not appeared here for more than half a year since the last time he left. As soon as he appeared this time, he felt that someone was spying on him from 10 miles away. Then, as expected, someone came out from the dark. There were even 2 people hiding by the sand, using the camouflage there. Even if they were 5 steps away, it would be difficult to discover them. "Hello, young master." There were a total of 8 soldiers in charge of security, and 3 of them were members of the cold front that he had personally trained. Yes, you have to be vigilant at all times. You have to know that once the enemy appears, they will never notify you in advance. Yang Qindong smiled and nodded. He knew that under normal circumstances, there were 10 guards in a squad. Only 8 people appeared here, which meant that there were 2 people hiding in the dark and did not take the initiative to come out to greet him. Logically speaking, being able to meet the sixth young master was an opportunity to show their faces, but they would rather give up such an opportunity and still carry out the task of being on guard. This alone was enough to make Yang Chendong feel gratified. Each of you will be rewarded with 5 taels of silver, and the other 2 brothers will be rewarded with 10 taels of silver each. Generous rewards and fair punishments were always an important way to capture people's hearts. Now that Yang Chendong was not short of money, he naturally did not hesitate to spend it. Thank you, young master. Thump, thump, thump. The 8 guards were all delighted. This was a reward from the 6th young master, and it was enough for them to brag for a while. Well, this is what you deserve. Continue with your mission. Yang Chendong waved his hand and smiled as he led Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and Yang Si to the Black Wharf. Yang San stayed in Jianghu Prefecture to set up the security bureau, while Yang Wu and Yang Lu were responsible for the safety of the Yang family. Under the division of labor, Yang Chendong only appeared a few hundred miles away with the 3 of them. But even so, if anyone had any ideas about the 6th young master, they would be making a big mistake. With the large warehouse and advanced weapons in hand, no matter how many people came, they would not be able to do anything to them. It was not an exaggeration to describe the Black Wharf as the speed of Shenzhen's reform and opening up 8 years ago. It had only been half a year, but several factories had already been built. Among them was the arsenal. At present, they could only make bows and crossbows, but with Gao Xiong's continuous supply of iron and copper from the sea. With no shortage of resources, innovation was only a matter of time. The person in charge, Wu Gang, was one of the old people. Cement factory. With a lot of knowledge provided by Yang Chendong, the first batch of cement had already appeared and passed the inspection. Now, more students were being trained to ensure that once a new base was established, a large number of people who knew about cement could immediately use it. The person in charge of this was a person called Jing Guang, who was originally recruited by the old butler, Ong Hai, when he went to the Ministry of Works in the capital. Yang Rong was the Minister of Works for a long time, so he still had the ability to hire a few idle people in the ministry. Chapter 28. Furniture Factory. Its main purpose was to build some furniture and the layout of the soldier training factory. Things like sofas, work tables, and even the construction of carriages were all within its scope. Right now, there was no rubber or suitable materials to make tires. Otherwise, Yang Chendong would have wanted to make some new carriages. To be honest, every time he came to the Black Dock, it was bad luck. The bumpiness was really unbearable. For this reason, Yang Chendong even had the idea of taking out a military vehicle from the warehouse. However, he felt that it was still too shocking and had to suppress this idea. However, he had already decided that this time, when he came to the Black Dock, he would arrange for Gao Xiong to send people to the west to search for rubber trees, especially in the American region. Then, he would bring back the whole tree. One day, he would be the first person to make soft tires. The furniture factory was more complicated. The person in charge was also the old craftsman, Li Xuanfu. This person was very meticulous and made Yang Chendong feel more at ease. Power plant. Just by hearing the name, one would know its purpose. However, at that time, no one could understand. Even the person in charge, Wan Qi, was very puzzled. Wan Qi was a craftsman from the Ministry of Works. It was said that he was very smart. When he was very young, he knew how to make many novel and strange things. However, because he was born as a craftsman, his life was naturally not rich. He found a wife, Zhou Hua, who was very good at giving birth. She actually gave birth to 7 children in a few years, living up to his name. With more mouths to feed, Wan Qi naturally could not take care of everything. It was at this time that Yang Hai went to the Ministry of Works and found out about Wan Qi's situation. He remembered that the 6th young master had once said that as long as someone was capable, he would not lack money and food. As such, he brought him over. In order to have enough to eat, Wan Qi brought his wife and children from the capital to Fujian. However, before they reached Jianghu, they were picked up by people from Lingfeng. When they arrived, not only did Luan Qi become a research worker, but his wife, Zhou Hua, also showed enough ability. She was very skillful with her hands. The clothes she made were good, fast, and neat. However, this was not the main point. Luan Qi obtained a book on the principles of sewing machine manufacturing written by the sixth young master. It was written on a method to use machine to sew clothes. The main components of the machine base, the needle, the shuttle, and the oil bottle could be made one by one. One could imagine that if it was successful, it would greatly increase the speed of making clothes. It was definitely a great undertaking. When Zhou Hua heard the news, she urged her husband to build such a machine every day. As a skilled embroidery worker, she was too aware of their fate. Many people's eyes were damaged when they were young, so they were useless when they were old. When they arrived at the illegal docks, their meals and drinks were naturally arranged. Luan Qi was very happy to be able to enter a special research area. Especially when he heard that the sewing machine manufacturing principles were written by the sixth young master himself, he admired it even more. It was difficult to call him, who was originally in a state of research. Not to mention thunder, even if it was a knife, he would not be distracted at all. This was the spirit that a research worker should have. But this time, when he heard someone outside shouting that the young Master Qi was here, he put down all the work in his hands and ran out. Like Luan Qi, all the people at the illegal docks were also like him. Some of them came first, and some came later. But no matter what, they did not have to worry about food and drink now. All of this was brought to them by the sixth young master. They knew how to be grateful. Spontaneously coming out to greet him was a show of their attitude. When Luan Qi came out of his research room, he saw that Yang Qindong was already surrounded by a group of people. Many of these people had never seen the sixth young master before, but they had been hearing legends about this young master ever since they came here. In their imagination, this person must be tall and powerful, and it was even possible that he had 3 heads and 6 arms. When they surrounded him, it was more of a novelty. However, with so many people suddenly surrounding him, it was difficult to guarantee his safety. Not only Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, Yang Si, but even Ling Song and Gao Xiong rushed over with the members of the Cold Front to maintain order. In response, Yang Qindong waved his hand and refused. These people trusted him so much, but they could not trust him completely. Who else in the world could be trusted? It's okay. Let them come over and take a look. I also want to talk to them. Yang Qindong acted as if nothing would happen. He picked up a cute little girl who was dressed neatly and had bright eyes. He took out a piece of chewing gum and handed it to her. Big brother, how do you eat this? Do you put it in your mouth? The little girl did not seem to be very afraid of people. She was still smiling when Yang Qindong carried her in his arms. Yes, this thing is called chewing gum. It can keep your breath fresh. You have to put it in your mouth, but you can only chew it. Once it becomes tasteless, you have to spit it out. You can't eat it. Oh, by the way, it can also blow bubbles. As Yang Qindong spoke, he put the same piece of chewing gum in his mouth and began to chew it. Little girl, what's your name? Seeing Yang Qindong take the lead and put the chewing gum in his mouth, the little girl was no longer afraid. She also opened the packaging of the gum in her hand and chewed it. As she ate, she said with a smile, "It's so sweet. Big brother, my name is Xiao Yu. My parents said that on the day I was born, it was drizzling for a whole day. Xiao Yu, what a good name. Hee hee." When he said this, Yang Qindong slowly blew a white bubble in his mouth. Ah! Seeing this scene that she had never seen before, Xiao Yu was shocked. Her big eyes were filled with a why look. Fortunately, she was smart enough and quickly began to learn how to blow bubbles. However, this kind of thing requires skill. It is not something that can be learned by a first-timer. In addition, chewing gum is not like bubble gum. There is a certain degree of difficulty in blowing bubbles. It is even more impossible to learn immediately. After Yang Qindong ate a piece of candy, white bubbles came out of his mouth, causing the other children to be surprised and envious. Some of the bolder children also tried to reach out to Yang Qindong, wanting a piece of candy that could blow bubbles. Yang Qindong, who had prepared a lot, naturally did not refuse. With the mentality of not worrying about scarcity, but worrying about uneven distribution, he gave a piece to all the children who came to ask for it. The children were happy, but some of the adults were panicking, especially Xiao Yu's mother. She walked over in a panic, bowed, and then said with an apologetic face, "Sixth young master, Xiao Yu is not sensible and asked for things from you. Please forgive her." Looking at the somewhat beautiful middle-aged woman who was neatly dressed, Yang Qindong's face was filled with kindness. "You are Xiao Yu's mother?" This time, without waiting for the woman to answer, Gao Xiong introduced her first, reporting to young master, "This woman is Xiao Yu's mother. Her name is Zhou Hua, and she is the wife of the person in charge of the power plant, Yuanqi. At the same time, she is very skillful. We were just about to report to you and ask you to approve her as the manager of the garment factory." "Yuanqi? I've heard of this person." Yang Qindong nodded. Long before he came, he had read some information about the illegal docks. Yuanqi was a person with ideas, strong skills, and was regarded as the smartest person. Naturally, his name had long been in his mind. Zhou Hua was originally a little helpless, afraid that her little daughter would do something wrong and offend the sixth young master. Now that she heard that he already knew her husband's name, she immediately felt honored and her expression became much better. "Okay, I'll leave the child to you. Tell your husband that I want to have a good chat with him later." Yang Qindong said politely, and at the same time, he handed Xiao Yu, who was leaning on his arms, back to Zhou Hua. He had always valued talents. If possible, he did not mind telling Yuanqi what he knew, hoping that he could really create electricity. In that case, countless people would benefit from it, and it would also greatly promote the development of science. Zhou Hua had always been a carefree person. Even in the face of strangers, she would not feel afraid. However, she did not know why, but when facing the amiable Yang Qindong, she sweated all over. That was a manifestation of nervousness. Perhaps this was a kind of attitude and respect towards people who were important. The children received the chewing gum and ran away with smiles. Some adults also saw Yang Qindong's true appearance and left with satisfaction. With fewer people around, Yang Qindong walked towards the military camp in the distance, accompanied by Leng Song and Gao Xiong. According to Yang Qindong's idea, the military camp was built very neatly. It was a straight line, giving off a very orderly feeling. Yang Qindong watched the training of the Leng Feng soldiers here. Over the past half a year, the older Leng Feng soldiers had already taken in disciples. Mixing the old and the new was indeed an effective way to increase their combat strength. In addition, after Gao Xiong obtained the new cannons, every time he went out to sea, he would come back victorious. Not only did he bring back unlimited wealth, he also brought back a lot of strong laborers. Among them, there were some good seedlings. After a strict selection process, they became auxiliary soldiers. The so-called auxiliary soldiers were a battle sequence given by Yang Qindong. He also called these people the reserve soldiers. It referred to those soldiers who were undergoing training but had not passed the various tests. In the future, once an auxiliary soldier passed the test and reached the standard, he would immediately become a new Leng Feng soldier. The direct benefit was that his monthly salary would increase. The 1 silver tael per month when he was an auxiliary soldier would become 2 silver taels. Of course, this was not the most important thing. After becoming a Leng Feng soldier, it meant that he was a qualified soldier and would be given a 81 rifle. That was the symbol of glory. For the sake of safety, they usually did not carry bullets in their guns. They would only carry bullets when they were shooting targets or when they needed to go out on missions. However, this still made some people wild with joy. Every new member of Cold Front carried a gun and walked around the dark dock. It was not only to show off, but also to show off, you're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.